Hi, everyone. If you have been with us for the showcase spotlight there with Danny Marshall, thanks so much for that. An author without doubt to watch out for. And if you're joining us now, just for the Noir at the Bar, you are most welcome. Thank you for being back with us. Either if you've been watching through these lockdown times, or if this is the first time you've been with us, you are most welcome. And anybody who's watching later, after we've done this, thanks for dropping in with Noir at the Bar, Edinburgh, a digital event coming to you courtesy of Honey and Stag. I'm the stag part, and there by my side is the honey side. Hi, Kelly. Good evening. How's it going?
Hello, good evening. It's very well. I'm excited.
I know we've got 10 authors all lined up, and as I say, these wouldn't normally be people, most of them, that we could get at an in real life Edinburgh Noir at the Bar. So just one of the few benefits that this time has brought, I think, the chance for us to be able to listen to authors that aren't normally within our reach, and actually be together with many more people than we normally would. So it's good stuff.
We're live on YouTube this week, this time
Ooh,
around, for the first time.
live on YouTube as well, and we should give a shout out as well to our comments wrangler, Maggie Russell over there. She's coming. She's with us in France, isn't she?
Yes.
Yes, I love it. International, worldwide. No, and Maggie will come on at the end and say hi as well. There's just too many authors in that green room for us to get her in. So, yeah.
And one quick thing, remember, if you're watching on Facebook, if you're getting captions up on the screen and you don't want them, just click the settings button and you can turn them off, and you can make it high definition as well.
Excellent. Okay, so if you are all sitting comfortably, and I think we're ready for kicking off with our first author this evening. This author is somebody who, over, I would say, the last 6 months, has become one of my all-time favorite authors with one book. To me, it's somebody who has pushed the boundaries again with crime fiction. And I'm so pleased that he's able to be on here with us, Noir at the Bar, Edinburgh. Please, everybody, if you will welcome Trevor Wood.
I'm blushing now, Jackie.
Don't blush, don't blush. It's so well deserved, honestly. I'm going to ask you about that book when we've had a little bit of reading from you. But if you'd allow me just to introduce you to the viewers out there. So Trevor's lived in Newcastle for 25 years, successful playwright, who's also worked as a journalist and a spin doctor with the City Council. Prior to that, he served in the Royal Navy. Now, did you see the link there that we got between the Spotlight author, whose novel Anthrax Island had him being taken over by the Navy? And here we've got Trevor. No, I'm just kidding. Served in the Royal Navy for 16 years. Now, his first novel, this novel that I spoke about before, The Man on the Street, has been optioned for TV by World Productions, and they are none others than the makers of Line of Duty and Bodyguard. So I think that fabulous novel is in some very good hands, and we need to be seeing that on our screens without a doubt. Trevor, how long did it take for you to get this book out to us?
Wow, it's a big question. It took me about 18 months to write, probably, but I was doing an MA, and it was part of that course, which was a 2-year course. So there was a lot of academic work as well, so it probably would have been a bit quicker. But yeah, about 18 months to write, and then probably another year before I got a deal, really. Quite a lot of rejections along the way, as most authors get. But thankfully, eventually, Quercus made me an offer that I literally couldn't refuse.
Couldn't refuse, yeah. And this beautiful story proves to me that I always think when the time is right, or when that magic descends, a book that initially has been rejected, the way people are shouting about it now just goes to show the importance just to, if you believe in your work, just to keep going with it. Yeah.
You've always got to believe there's one person out there in the publishing world who will say, yeah, this is the book.
Yeah. So what part are you going to read to us?
I'm going to read one of the fairly early chapters. It's about chapter 4, I think, which is where Jimmy, who's the homeless veteran, who's the main protagonist, is sleeping on the quayside in an empty pavilion when he hears some voices.
Thank you. Please take it away, and I'll come back after and just do a little gentle grilling.
Okay, now?
Please.
The quayside, June the 5th. Jimmy woke up with tears running down his cheeks. He didn't know why. Dog was sitting up, staring at him, confused. Jimmy had probably been crying out in his sleep. Bev used to banish him to the spare room when it got too much. He could see the names of various cities embossed on the side of the open roof. Hull, Antwerp, Malmo, Copenhagen. Places the ships used to go when there were ships, right there on the river, where his dad worked before he got laid off. Now there are only bars and expensive works of art, like this place, the Swirl Pavilion, a future folly with its sandstone walls, a golden globe hovering over its open top like a satellite. Someone was talking, arguing even. He sat up and looked through a gap between 2 stone pillars. 2 men stood about 30 yards away by a 2-bar rail that ran along the river, their long shadows framed in the towering arc of the Millennium Bridge. The man facing away from Jimmy was tall, over 6 foot, wearing a donkey jacket, a black and white striped bobble hat on his head. He reminded Jimmy of a bricklayer friend he used to have, his shoulders somehow too big for the rest of him. The other man was shorter, about Jimmy's height, slighter too, wearing a denim jacket and pale chinos, a black bag, like a school satchel, slung over his shoulder. A social worker type, Jimmy thought, and he'd met enough of them to know. There was no one else around. The nearby bars and restaurants had long since kicked out their punters. About 4 a.m., Jimmy guessed. The men were closer together now, talking, the smaller one shrugging occasionally, slightly unsteady on his feet. Jimmy wondered if it was a gay hookup, but if it was, they were in the wrong place. Dogleap Stairs was the place for that. Anyway, none of his business. He lay down again, drifted off. Flames everywhere. He's in bed. An empty space beside him. Where's Bev? Burning curtains fall to the floor, setting fire to the covers. He leaps up, naked, sweating. Where is she? The doorway's ablaze and the window. A woman screams from somewhere. The stairs? He runs through the doorway, feeling no heat, no pain, straight into the back of Bev, who's standing on the landing. He spins her around. Her hair's on fire, her lips and nose melting. Get help, she whispers, locking him in a fiery embrace. Jimmy woke again, bathed in sweat this time, heart pounding, ready to burst out of his chest like an alien. His hands beating at the non-existent flames, his eyes searching for Bev but seeing only stone pillars and open sky. Dog stirred at his feet, disturbed by the raised voices outside, angrier now than before. Fragments drifted over. I saw you. Fucking incensed. None of your business. Your system. It's wrong. Jimmy took a deep breath and let it go, then another and another, until he felt his heartbeat start to slow. A cellmate had once told him that thinking of a happy place would help. Like where, he'd asked. Suddenly there was another shout, indistinct this time, then a cry of pain and a muffled thud, something heavy hitting the ground. Jimmy froze, not wanting to get involved. Whatever was happening was someone else's problem. Under his breath, he started to repeat his self-taught mantra. Not my fight, not my fight, not my fight. The silence bothered him more than the shouting, and he wished the voices would start up again. Then he heard another noise, a dragging sound, that same heavy thing being pulled along the ground. Not towards him, away from him, towards the river. Now he wished it was silent again. Not my fight, he whispered. To his relief, the dragging sound stopped. The loud splash that followed was worse. Jimmy took one more deep breath, sat up slowly, and looked across to where he'd last seen the men. The bricklayer was on his own now, his back to Jimmy, standing at the rail and peering at the river. The other man had vanished, his satchel lying on the ground. A moment later, the tall man turned, picked up the bag, and left. As soon as he was out of sight, Jimmy went to the rail, dog at his heels, and looked over. There was nothing to see, just the black waters of the River Tyne, still as a grave.
Trevor, thank you very much. Wow. Trevor, oh, where's Trevor gone? There's Trevor. Trevor's coming back.
I'm sneaking a beer.
Is that what it was? Swept away on the waters of the Tyne. Now, I have to ask you, choosing to write a main protagonist, that homeless voice, you could have chosen, to construct any kind of protagonist. Was it important for you, and why, to create a character like this?
Yeah, it was. I think homelessness is a huge problem in the UK. And one of the problems is that we demonise the people. And I wanted to try and humanise them a bit. But I didn't want to kind of clean it up. I wanted to show them as they are, with faults, and to show that they've made mistakes, and maybe they've been unlucky, to show them warts and all, if you like, but also to try and get people to sympathise and empathise with them. And I hope I've done that.
Yeah, I think you have, and also that idea of that community, that there is. So it's not just one character, but you have, a number of protagonists in similar situations.
Yeah, I volunteer at a soup kitchen in Newcastle, the People's Kitchen, and it is a community, and they do look out for each other, the same as any group of people, really. And I wanted to kind of, get that over as well.
So I just must say hi to people. Helen Fields in San Diego, Julie Wolfe, Folkestone. There's people here listening to you, Trevor, who are in Los Angeles. Melanie Baird.
Wow.
So you are international, sir, which is awesome. I'm really pleased about that. But we have a question there, and it's Justin Claire Chilton Robinson, and she says, are any of your characters based on real people, Trevor?
Not strictly on real people, but Jimmy, the main character, his name comes from two places, really. There was a homeless guy who's sadly now long dead, who was quite famous in Newcastle. He used to be seen hovering around the quayside quite a lot and riding on the metro a lot, who was called Jimmy. So the name partially came from there, and also from, I read a book called The Veteran Survival Guide, which is written by an ex-army guy who served 2 tours in Northern Ireland, also called Jimmy Johnson. And he got terrible PTSD and ended up committing 2 murders. He's still in prison now. And he's written a book whilst they're explaining how his untreated PTSD was so problematic, and it's an advice book, really, to people as to how to deal with it and how to make sure they get some kind of treatment. So partially inspired by that as well. So the two Jimmys inspired my Jimmy, I think.
Brilliant. And we'll take one more question. I'm sorry, I could spend all evening with you, Trevor, talking about this book. But I know there are other people we need to bring on. But a question there from Polly Crosby. She says, I love the idea of dog. Were they there from the beginning when you thought up the idea of the novel?
Yeah, I don't plan at all. I kind of sit down and write. And when I wrote the very first chapter on the very first page, I knew he would have a dog, but at that time in his life, he didn't really care about a great deal. And I kind of figured that when he found dog, or dog found him, he didn't even have the energy to give it a name, and he just called it dog. And I wrote that on the first page. It's on the first page of the book, and I kind of stuck with it, and I really grew to love the idea, and it almost becomes an affectionate name rather than a kind of throwaway thing.
I think, yeah, it gathers in identity as it goes along.
Is Meggie in the background somewhere? She wrote a brilliant review for me, which I saw today, But I know that halfway through she was worried about Dog. Don't worry. That's all I'm going to say for people out there. He'll be fine.
He'll be fine. Trevor, other people have popped other questions on. I wonder, would you be happy to go on to Facebook? Because I'm going to have to say goodbye
Yeah,
to you
of
now.
course, of
And
course.
did you respond to those lovely bods? Is that all right?
Yeah, no problem at all. And also, let me say that I'd be very happy to come to Edinburgh in real life and do this.
Yes, yes.
When I
Trevor,
can, when I'm
when
allowed.
you can, it's a deal. As soon as it's safe, as soon as we hold the first one, get yourself up here.
Okay,
Yeah,
no worries.
awesome. See you soon now.
Thanks very much, Jackie. Ta-ra.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Great start to the evening. Hope all those people who are watching all over the world, welcome, welcome. Great start there with Trevor. Our next author, next up, Judith Baker. Now, Judith has had 7 novels published with Bloodhound Books. Her 8th book, The Girl I Used to Be, is due out at the beginning of July, and her 9th, In the Dying Minutes, is due to be published mid-September. Now, don't you just hate it when somebody says, I've got 2 books coming out? You think, I just wish I could get one. It's brilliant, Judith. It's really good. And I'm going to ask you about both of those. She lives in a village in the outskirts of Darlington with her husband and dog, and has 4 adult children, 1 grandchild and another on the way. And I wonder if the one on the way is going to coincide with one of these publications. Anyway, everybody, if you will, welcome Judith Baker into the room.
Hi.
Hi, Judith. Or should we say J.A. Baker, as you
J.A.
published?
Yeah, when I kind of chose that name, I didn't
Mhm.
realise there was another J.A. Baker who writes about falcons, but there you go.
I actually, I like the notion of falcons as well, though. Such a noble bird. But anyway, can I call you Judith in our
You
conversation? Is that all right?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Much more formal.
So, Judith, 8 books, absolutely, well, 9 really, because we've got the 8th, The Girl I Used to Be, and then In the Dying Minutes is coming soon. You are a prolific writer by the sounds of it. I mean, do you produce easily?
I've actually got another one come out now. The 10th is due out in January, so I only found that out yesterday. So yeah, so another one, yes, on the way.
So are you able? So do you write full time?
I write a lot. I did have some kind of when I got signed by Bloodhound, I did have some backlog of books to kind of refine.
Okay. Yeah.
I am slowing down a bit, I have to say, simply because of spine problems, sitting at a computer and that kind of thing. So I am slowing down, and it's allowed me to go part-time at work, so that helps.
Great.
When I was working full-time in a school, it was tricky.
Yeah, definitely. And the pressure that's involved in that kind of work as well, to free your head to then write.
Yeah, exactly. I kind of used to try and get as much done during the summer holidays as I could. So
which one of your books are you going to read to us from?
I'm going to read the new one, The Girl I Used to Be. So, right. Would you like me to get started?
I really would. Please take us away.
She needs to get out. She cannot remain here all day, cooped up in this place, trapped and frightened while the sun makes its inevitable sluggish descent over the horizon, while the darkness sets in and shadows dance and stretch over her, eerie silhouettes reminding her of where she is and how long this has lasted. She has to get out. A feeling of disquiet blooms under her skin, numbing her senses, dulling her reactions. She is groggy, weak and unsteady. She will try to pull herself round soon, try to reason with this person before they do something dreadful to her, something unthinkable, something final. She shivers and closes off those thoughts, shifting about to get comfortable, her clothing twisting and pulling. The ground is cold, hard, an unyielding surface under her soft flesh. She shuffles this way and that, tries to reposition herself, hoping to alleviate the ache that throbs and pulses in the lower half of her body, pinballing up and down her spine. It's difficult to do anything, to move about or attempt to free herself. Her hands are tied behind her back, her feet held together with duct tape, a crude but effective method of containment. She hopes soon to be able to wriggle free from it, but it's slowing her down, increasing her clumsiness. Straightening her back, she manages to find a more comfortable spot, letting out a low sigh as she stretches her legs. It gives her only a small amount of relief. The pain is still present, nagging at her, reminding her of where she is and who put her here. That is something she simply cannot comprehend, how it has come to this, how she didn't see it before now. She listens to the voices outside, to the frantic shouts, the cries of terror in the distance, the nearby whispers that are desperate, urgent. Her ears are attuned to the authoritative tone of the negotiator, their pleas for the door to be opened, for the weapon to be surrendered, for her to be released unharmed. Time has lost all meaning. How long has she been here? Minutes? Hours? At some point she blacked out, coming to as her feet were being bound together. She was too disorientated to do anything, too confused to escape or fight back. Fog had descended on her brain, muddying her thoughts, blotting out all logic. But now she is awake. Now she is beginning to think straight. She can remember what happened, what took place prior to her being trapped in here, and wishes she couldn't. The memory punches its way into her brain, lodging in her consciousness, forcing her to relive it. Everything is now horribly clear in her mind. And with that clarity comes terror. Terror and fear that slither their way under her skin, clogging up her veins, turning her innards to liquid. Her heart begins to pound, a relentless thump against her ribcage. A vice tightens around her skull. She tries to slow her breathing, to take control of it. A noise is close by, too close. She can feel the heat from her captor. The air is thick with it. She can smell their rancid odour, hear the low rustle of their movements. She can detect their deteriorating mood, threatening, unpredictable, hell-bent on some sort of warped revenge.
Judith, I can't breathe.
That's the hope. When people read it, yes, it does grab them. Yeah,
It really does. I mean, the descriptive power of your writing there. I mean, first of all, to feel extremely uncomfortable. You can feel this pain,
yeah.
and then the fear that mounts. I wanted to ask you, as a person, do you suffer from claustrophobia?
Yes, I do. Does that come across?
Well, I wasn't sure because you seem to write it so well, and I'm thinking, if this is something you have problems with, how were you able to, actually sit down and pen those words?
I suffer terribly. I have terrible nightmares about being trapped in small spaces. Yeah. So maybe it's subconsciously that has come across in my writing. I certainly didn't do it intentionally, but absolutely that is my one fear, claustrophobia.
Yeah. Now,
Yeah.
Susie said she missed the name of the book. Could you repeat it?
Yes, it is The Girl I Used to Be, and it is out on July the 6th.
You don't have a little copy to hold up there, do you?
Don't as yet. No, sorry. The cover reveal will be the week before. So if she's on Facebook, if she watches out for it, it will be spread far and wide on Facebook. Yeah.
Excellent. Now, let me ask you, in your bio, you said you've got another grandchild on the way, and
Yeah.
I just wondered whether it was going to coincide with one of these books.
Possibly. The book that's coming out in December, it may coincide with that because the grandchild's due in November. And it's a bit of a pity, really, because we haven't been able to meet up and hug and congratulate because of the current circumstances.
Yeah, I just think what a lovely, mega family celebration that would be.
Yeah, I know. We're just hoping it'll all be sorted by then. Yeah, we've kind of shouted across the garden to each other, but that's as far as we've got, really. So it's all a bit sad, but a bit exciting at the same time. Yeah.
Now, with regard to your writing, are you a standalone writer or do you series?
I haven't written a series as yet. I do standalone. I do write psychological suspense stories.
Yeah.
I do admire people who write a series because I don't know that my knowledge could stretch that far, if you see what I mean. And they're usually police procedural, which I'm not wholly familiar with, and I would make a terrible mistake. That's why I tend to stick to the psychological side of it.
And you evidently, I mean, 10 books on, this is evidently something that is deep within you and that you enjoy to do. Yeah.
I love it. If I'm not writing, I feel as if I'm a bit bereft. I don't know what to do with myself. Yeah.
And so, in this, in The Girl I Used to Be, can you tell us anything without giving anything away, of course, about the woman in who's held captive?
Right, kind of. It's tricky. All I can say is the main character works in a school, much like myself. So it's based in and around a school and this person's history and how she has changed, but the past really never leaves you. It's always there, ready to rise to the surface, and that's the whole premise of the book.
Of the yeah. Now another question from Justine Claire Chilton Robinson, and it's, where do your ideas come from?
Oh, everywhere. I cherry pick them from absolutely everywhere. If I see a scene on the TV or something happening in the street or snippets of conversation, I'll kind of just piece them all together and just see what comes up, what I come up with. So absolutely dreams, my really vivid dreams about being trapped in small spaces. Yeah, I use that a lot. Yeah.
It's wonderful, wonderful. Judith, I'm really sorry that I'm going to have to wish you a good evening just because we need to get the next author on. Thank you so much for being on tonight, and all the best with these 3 books that are coming out. Yeah?
Thank you for having me. It's been wonderful.
Not a bother. See you soon, yeah?
See you later. Bye.
Okay, bye. Oof, I hope you're all breathing there after really, really heavy description there of being locked up. Nicely done, J.A. Baker, nicely done. So, on to our 3rd author tonight. I met this author last year, or was it the year previous, at Iceland Noir? It must have been 2018. Christopher Pettersson. Now, Chris lives in a small wood in Denmark. Now, that just gets my antenna going altogether. If it's Nordic, it's delightful. But anyway, he started writing stories about Greenland while teaching in Karnak, the largest village in the very north of Greenland. And he spent a total of 7 years in Greenland teaching in remote communities and at the police academy in the capital of Nuuk. He's a prolific author of Arctic Noir. It's going to get chilly, so get your cardies on for this reading. He's written novels and novellas, mostly known for his stories, though, about the Greenlandic police constable David Maratse. He publishes independently in English, with several books traditionally published in different languages. Christopher continues to be inspired by the vast icy wilderness of the Arctic, and his books have a common setting in the region. So everybody, please welcome Christopher Pettersson. Oh, can't hear you, Christopher. Are you unmuted? Oh.
Christopher, do you want to try taking your headset out? We could do that. Ooh. Do you want to take your headset out without the headset? Take your headphones.
Ooh.
Sorry, folks, it'll be 2 seconds.
I know it's that. Oh, no. No. How?
No. Also, I wanted to say, while we're here, Jackie, a huge thank you to Susie Aspley, who's very busy over on Twitter, tweeting photographs and really interactive. So thank you, Susie.
Thank you, Susie, for your interaction there, keeping it going round. Lovely, lovely. And thank you for the people that are posing questions. Now, how are... Oh.
Jackie, will we...
What do you reckon? Should we get someone else in and try
we do
again?
Helene and then come back to Christopher?
Yeah, do you mind, Christopher? We're going to get Helene in and come back to you, see if we can get the technical stuff sorted. Yeah?
2 minutes,
Yeah.
yeah. And maybe if you can leave and come back in, maybe it could be there's too many people in the room. Thanks, Christopher. Okay, Jackie,
Brilliant.
sorry.
No bother, no bother, no bother. So, thank you for bearing with us. Oh, the joys of technology. Next author then, and hopefully I'm sure there'll be no bother with this, is Helene Kiest. Now, Helene is a Dutch author of suspense novels living in Glasgow. Her debut in Servitude won a silver medal for the best European fiction at the Independent Publishers Book Awards. She was motivated to write her second novel when she was groped and asked to smile by strangers one too many times. Stay Mad, Sweetheart is an empowering feminist thriller published by Red Dog Press last November. And CWA Dagger winner M.W. Craven, he called this simply superb. However, tonight, Helene is teasing us with a world exclusive. It's the first scene of her latest work in progress about a traumatized dentist's descent into drug-fueled criminality. Oh my goodness. What a premise on which to base a novel. Everybody, welcome Helene Kiest.
Hi, Jackie.
Hello, hello. How are you doing?
I'm very well. I'm very excited. I got to skip the queue as well.
I know. Oops.
I'm sure Christopher will get it to work.
We'll sort that out. No bother. Do you know, it is so lovely to see you. And having heard you read before, I know that we're in for a treat. So tell us, what's it going to be called, this work in progress? Do you know?
Well, it's currently called A Common Threat. And I won't disclose why, but there are 3 reasons why it's called that. So I'm hoping that we can keep the title.
Oh, A Common Threat. Yeah, it's beautiful. Before we start, can I just say a big hi to Kirsten Mackenzie, who's joined us from New Zealand. Hi, Kirsten.
Wow.
So, yeah. So we've got the States, we've got New Zealand, and I know we've got people here in Edinburgh as well. So and you're over in Glasgow. So gorgeous connections. So we're going to set back, and if you will, Helene, do us the honors.
Great stuff. So I'm going to start from page 1, essentially, and it's chapter 1. Radha. Your future's in your hands, they'd say at school. Never was this more a lie than now. I stood weighing the thin blue and white envelope in my palm. Light. Was that good? I wouldn't normally open post in between patients. It was hard enough to stick to time. But Pauline, the practice receptionist, had thrust it into my hands with a knowing look the second I exited my surgery. There were letters and there were letters. Unlike handwritten ones to be savored at home, the odd thank you for surprisingly painless treatment, or bills and financial statements to be disregarded until the end of the week, this one demanded my immediate attention. This one I'd expected and dreaded for 3 months, fueling an anxiety that pushed me to do things I never thought I would. This one would seal my fate. I leaned against the wall, cooling my face against its imperturbable sterility. My fingers trembled as I flipped the envelope over and pulled out the single sheet. 3 stacked words filled the top quarter of the page, the font bolded, as though their importance needed further underscoring. It didn't. General Dental Council. 3 words that put any dentist immediately ill at ease, whether they'd done something wrong or not. And I was about to find out if I had, if the old woman's death was my fault. If everything I'd worked for, everything I ever wanted was about to be ripped from me. So much of my identity, ever since I donned my brother's oversized school shirt and poked at my teddy bears' mouths with Kirby grips, proudly sporting a home-craft name tag, should anyone be in any doubt that I was Radha, the dentist. My breathing constricted. My eyes flashed down, past my name, past the reminder of what the case was about, as if I'd forget, and straight to the last sentence. The council has determined that your fitness to practice has not been impaired. I sank into a squat, the cotton folds of my stiff uniform digging into the back of my knees. I dropped my head into my lap, cleared. A huge sob escaped my lips as tears pooled in my eyes. It was over. A soft cough made me look up. Pauline pointed at her watch and winced. Radha, I'm sorry, but are you all right? I nodded, sniffed. I'm fine. I'll be right there. I heaved myself up. As I strode back to my surgery, my husband Arjun stepped out of his. "Whoa, be careful, babe," he said, grabbing me by the elbow to prevent a collision. He flashed his perfect teeth, teeth that attracted people from far and wide to get their cosmetic work done at our practice, a smile that made me fall for him all those years ago at uni. He looked at me and asked, "What's wrong?" "Not wrong." I shook my head and smiled. "The opposite of wrong. The GDC, it wasn't my fault." I waved the letter in front of his eyes. "Oh, Radha, that's fantastic. You see, I told you it would all be okay." He held my face and rubbed away remnant tears with his thumbs. His warm touch soothed my nerves like a soft blanket. "Never a doubt in my mind," he said. A strand of hair escaped my plait. He curled it over his finger before gently tucking it behind my ear. "Trust you to think it could ever be your fault. The woman had an episode. You big worrywart." He stroked my back, then sent me on my way with a pat on the bum. "Better hurry, we don't want to lose any patients." I stiffened. A chill ran over me. "Oh, sorry," he said, grimacing. Poor choice of words. "It's okay." But it wasn't. I wasn't. Even though I'd been found not guilty, I knew that throughout this whole ordeal, my innocence had been lost. I hadn't been able to save the woman, my first patient, to die. And with my frantic search for peace, free from her, ubiquitous her, free from the council's intimidation, free from the distressing memories her death resurfaced, I was failing to save myself.
Yeah, what a wonderful read as well. I, like Meggie, am absolutely petrified of the dentist. So, you know, for you to set us off on that journey in a dentist was tricky as it was. I want to ask you, why choose a protagonist of that kind? It's really unusual.
Partly because it's unusual, and partly because the inspiration came from people around me. So much like my first novel, In Servitude, it's set in Pollokshields in Glasgow. It's a nice middle-class area. They're also full of professionals, and a lot of medical professionals, in fact. And so when I came up with the idea that I would want a medical professional to get addicted to drugs, which is what happens to her because she's traumatized, then, you know, you kind of go through, is it a GP, is it a whatever? But I actually have 4 dentist friends, and my sister-in-law is a dentist, and so it made a lot of sense. And I do worry, to be honest, whether people are going to not pick up the book because it's about a dentist. But I can reassure you, there's some dentistry, but it's not scary dentistry.
but not scary dentistry. But is there any other kind of grisliness in it?
No, actually, my writing doesn't tend to be very bloody. It's more suspenseful and more psychological, and you know, a lot of it's all in the first person, and a lot of it is perceived threat, perhaps more than actual threat. But there are criminals, obviously, that come into play in this story. That kind of, when Radha goes and buys some drugs in the wrong place, she gets into trouble, basically, and risks everything, and needs to find a way out.
So beautiful. So again, that sense of it could be any of us making a wrong decision and in the wrong time. Yeah. I have another question before I'll have to let you go. I really don't want to let you go. And people have thrilled to your reading. There's been such lovely comments. And again, if you want to go back on Facebook and respond to people.
Oh.
But I've just seen Melanie Baird's comment, most excellent reading about a dentist. I totally agree. My question is for you. Oh yeah, and Julie Wolfe, acting as much as reading, definitely. Yeah, and it makes all the difference.
I'm a failed actress, so there you go.
Or not so failed. But my question is about Red Dog Press. That you're published with, and I wanted to ask, how did you get to know them? How did they get to know you?
Well, actually, I had submitted to agents, as one does, and I thought capturing Stay Mad Sweetheart is a very feminist thriller. It's capturing the mood of the Me Too and everything. It's a great fun. And yet it didn't get picked up, which was a little bit unfortunate. But at the same time, I've been keeping my eye on some of the independents. I'm a big fan of Arenda books, for example. And I caught Red Dog teasing another author who clearly they had a collaboration of some description or and it became clear that they'd lost out to another publisher, this author, but they were kind of teasing, and they had a really good relationship. And I thought, that's very interesting, because for me, it's very much about the personal, it's very much about the relationship and the experience. And then I read, they'd been interviewed on a blog as well, Lost in the Land of Books. And I read about them, and they just seemed lovely and very funny. And I like funny. So I submitted to them, and Sean, who's the publisher, Sean Coleman, he replied within 24 hours and said, absolutely love this. Can we have it? Which is just the best response anybody could wish for. So I absolutely went with them, and it's been a very, very lovely experience. And, we struggle as indies, as you do. The market is stacked against us, but I certainly can't fault the effort, and I can't fault the love.
Excellent. And I think especially at this time, I know for everybody, writing and publishing, it's a tricky time. And I think if you've got an outfit like that behind you, it's really good. And Helene, when we can gather together physically, you'll come back over to Edinburgh and read again, won't you?
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Awesome. It's just one of my favorite evenings.
And the work in progress that you read to us from is called, so we can watch out for it?
A Common Threat.
A Common Threat.
It'll come out early next year.
Beautiful. I'm sorry I have to say good night to you. All right, but I'll see you soon, yeah?
Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone. See you soon. Oh, so, Kelly, can we go back to Christopher?
We're going to go forward and do, if you can head to Mr. Finch, and we'll go back to Christopher in a wee bit.
Lovely. No bother whatsoever. So, authors that I've already met, and now an author that I've never met before. At least I don't think so. Might be having a nana moment. Paul Finch. Now, Paul is a former cop and journalist, now turned best-selling crime writer, and is the author of the popular D.S. Mark Heckenberg and D.C. Lucy Claiborne novels. So I don't know if anybody out there watching has followed Paul and has been into those, but it sounds like a fabulous series of novels there. But his first novel for Orion is a standalone thriller called One Eye Open, and it was published this August. Paul is a native of Wigan, Lancashire, where he still lives today with his wife, Kathy. So everybody, please welcome Paul Finch into the room.
Hi, Jackie.
Hey, Paul. We haven't met before, have we? Or have we?
We've passed each other briefly at Harrogate. I think we have kind of nodded and said hello.
But we've never had a moment like this. No. And I must confess, it's like when I get to meet an author and find out that they've got a series, and it sounds like a series that I should be getting into. So I'm glad that serendipitous moment that Kelly drew you in, and that is lovely. What?
I'm honoured to be asked.
No bother. What will you be reading to us from tonight?
I'm going to read an extract from One Eye Open, which, as you say, is only out in August. But I've just finished the final proof, so it's gone into production now. So excellent. Whatever we uncover while I'm reading, it's too late to change it.
And we're not going to get into trouble, are we, for you revealing things?
No, I've already told them. I won't. There'll be no spoilers. It's just going to be a hopefully an atmospheric moment from the book.
Beautiful. Excellent. So we'll settle back, and Paul, if you will, take it away, and then we'll have a wee chat.
Okay. Just to let everybody know, I'm going to give you a piece from chapter 15. It seems like it's a long way into the book, but it's the lead up to a very important part of the book. If you just picture a couple of security guys driving a van, which is unexpectedly having to deliver a number of high-value security boxes. It's Christmas Eve and it's very cold, and it's also very dark. The police escort saw Len and Lewis onto the Ringwood Trading Estate, some 200 acres of new commercial property, enclosed by high net fencing and accessible by a single entrance exit, which connected with a slip road to the A120. However, after that, the cops peeled away and headed back into town. The security guards had already been advised of this via radio. It seemed that there was a serious problem down at the docks. A major fire had broken out in a warehouse and was in danger of spreading to adjoining houses. But on top of that, there had been disturbances in a number of town centre bars, and the police, though they had extra manpower on for Christmas Eve, were already at full stretch. "Well, we'll be there in 5 minutes," Len said, as he drove along the estate's main drag, a broad but unmarked roadway passing between open lawn areas and the towering, corrugated box-like structures that were the units. "We'll be fine." It was late afternoon, and in normal circumstances wouldn't yet be the end of the working day, but given the date, cars flitted past them as estate staff headed for the exit. Many lights were now switched off, most of the warehouses featureless outlines on the silk-black sky. Here and there, a reception lobby was still lit up, as were a couple of front offices, but few people were moving around. Several car parks were already empty. Though he'd been 5 years in the Royal Anglians, Lewis was less easy about it than Len. He'd never ridden cash in transit when it had been hit, but back in 2006 he'd been part of a 5-vehicle convoy in the Sangin district where they'd fallen foul of a Taliban ambush. Despite being heavily armed, the troops had suffered serious losses, 3 British soldiers and 1 Afghan interpreter killed, 6 others wounded. If 3 Apache attack helicopters hadn't showed up 10 minutes into the firefight, they might all have bitten the Afghan dust. On this occasion, they weren't even armed, of course. Lewis glanced into the side mirror to ensure there was no vehicle behind them. They swung a sharp right. The road ahead ran between more formal buildings, low-rise office blocks, all of them shrouded in darkness, particularly the side lanes dividing them. "What are all these places?" he asked. He'd never made a delivery to the Ringwood before, so it was unfamiliar to him, though he was becoming aware of its expansive labyrinthine layout. "Centrica, Electrolux, Virgin Media," Len replied. "All sorts, large, small, you name it." They swung a left, passing some kind of depot with numerous vehicles arrayed in straight lines on its forecourt, their windscreens and roofs encrusted with frost. After that, they were back among taller outlines again. Recognisable names flitted by in their headlights: O2, Network I, GlaxoSmithKline. Several minutes had passed since they'd seen another moving car or any light that wasn't a motion-sensitive security light. "Relax," Len said, surprised that someone with the look and aura of Idris Elba should be so uptight. "We're almost there. Next left, a couple of 100 yards and the job's a good un." Fine. Lewis glanced into his side mirror again. It was dark and empty back there, but without night vision, you couldn't be sure there was nothing happening. They veered right onto another straight but narrower passage running between the backs of buildings that were more like old-fashioned warehouses, all red brick, rusty pipework and dumpster-type bins. It spooled ahead a considerable distance, way more than a couple of 100 yards. "Down there?" Lewis said. "Len, hold up, wait." Len eased to a halt. They were about 40 yards in, their headlights showing nothing but cracked tarmac and gutters clumped with frozen snow. "This is a shortcut? This is the way to Unit 71. Looks a bit, I don't know, basic." Len shrugged. "Unit 71's high security storage. There is no front. It's just breeze blocks and slat steel fencing all the way around. The only gate's down the far end here, and you can't even tell it's a gate if you look at it casually." "Come on," he nudged Lewis's shoulder. "Tough ex-squaddy like you. Surely you can see the advantage of secret passages and hidden doors." "Suppose so," Lewis conceded. "Problem?" A muffled voice sounded from the rear. It was Ted Gox, the 3rd guy on the transport. He was locked into the back of the van. "No, we're good," Len shouted, putting the vehicle back in gear, easing forward again. They passed several rear doors on either side, all closed and padlocked. Several were double-sized and set into recesses, clearly entrances to garages. There were windows too, all black. It was reassuringly ordinary and utilitarian, and Lewis found himself relaxing again. 50 yards further on, it didn't strike him as odd when they passed a series of 3 spacious parking bays on the right, 2 empty but with a high-sided van bearing nondescript company logos and cardboard covering its windscreen occupying the 3rd one. Not that he would have had much time to think about it, because just ahead of them now, a huge pair of headlights sprang dazzlingly to life. They were on high beam and filled the entire alley with a blinding glare. Len shouted, slamming his brake to the metal, the van screeching such a distance that it almost front-ended the obstacle. When they halted, they were so close that even in the dark, they were able to see what it was, an HGV of some sort, which had just veered out from its parking space and only then had bothered to switch its lamps on. It didn't look like an Arctic, but it had a tall cargo compartment at the back like a removals wagon. Len gazed up at it dazedly. Lewis was shocked into momentary paralysis, but then heard an engine revving behind them and glanced into the side mirror. Glancing into the side mirror, saw that the high-sided van, now minus the cardboard on its windscreen, had pulled up behind and braked, blocking them in. What was more, its back doors had already been flung open because shadowy figures were leaping out and gambling forward along either side of it. Lewis got onto the radio. Mike Sierra 3, under attack. I repeat, we're under attack on the Ringway estate. We're under attack. With a crunch, the window alongside his face splintered.
Oh, Paul, the speed with which you had us travelling, it felt like we were in the vehicle.
Oh,
awesome. Well, yeah, awesome. Now, Susie Aspley, I've got some questions, but Susie Aspley has asked, do you do a lot of research? And where do you pull those ideas from?
Well, I guess it's two questions there, but I'll try and be brief on them both. I mean, the research is vital now. I mean, I am an ex-police officer, but time's moved on since my day, and whereas I've got a good solid idea of how these things work. Basically, the tech has changed so much, procedures and protocols change, so I've got to do my research like everyone else. I mean, one of the nice things, of course, is that you can wing it a little bit because the fact that procedures and protocols change all the time. You could do a whole shed load of police procedural research one week, and it could all be out of date in a year. Of course, the law changes too. So, but I do quite a bit of research. Yeah, there was a second part of that question, wasn't there?
Yeah, and it's where do you go to do it? I mean, what do you draw on? Because as you say, you were in the force, but now.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of my compatriots from those days have retired now. Most of them have, in fact, but they're still around for a chat. I know through my own crime writing, socializing and networking. I know other ex guys and girls who are ex-job. They had different areas of expertise. I pick their brains if it's a specialized job I'm looking at. I mean, funnily enough, in One Eye Open, I can just show you the cover. I think actually, I don't know if I could get it on camera there. That's the cover.
Yes, you can.
Oh,
yes,
cool,
you can.
cool.
Yeah.
That involved. Funnily enough, it's a standalone thriller, so it's none of my regular characters. But the lead character, Linda Hagen, is a traffic officer. Now, it's not very often we have traffic as the centre of our crime thrillers, is it? But she stumbled upon something that needs to be investigated, and so investigate it she does. So I had to do quite a bit of research there because I was never in traffic, you see, and they have their own systems, which. So I made a few phone calls.
Do you know what I really like? When we were talking to Helene before, and she said about writing a dentist because it's an unusual angle. And again, looking at law enforcement officers, not unusual, but to have a traffic.
Yeah, well, it's funnily enough. I was hitting a few of my. Last time I was at Harrogate, I was in the bar in the beer tent outside. And I was chatting to a few of us who are ex-job, always seem to congregate together. And everyone agreed that they'd never read a crime novel in which a traffic officer had been the main star. And so many ex-coppers never have anything good to say about traffic anyway, because they know they're playing to a public who've quite often been persecuted by the traffic police. I'm one of them. I've been done for speeding too. Yeah.
Okay, Julie Wolfe, great question. So was it hard for you to write a protagonist in Linda Hagen of the opposite sex?
Well, it's not as easy as it is writing, I imagine this is a rule across the board. It's not as easy writing as it is writing about your own sex. But 3 or 4 years ago, when I was still with Avon at HarperCollins, my editor there, who was fabulous, Helen, wanted me to write about a female character. My Heck books had been a more macho type coppering. So I came up with the Lucy Claiborne books. But Lucy, like Heck, was a single unit. She was unattached and therefore had lots of time to spend investigating. With Linda, I wanted something very different. I wanted Lynn to be a working mum who goes home at the end of every day to make dinner for the kids, and at the same time you know, has to deal with a husband who's an ex job and suffering traumatic stress because of the thing that he had to leave the job on medical advice. And I'm not going to go into that because I don't want to give away too many spoilers.
Yes.
But I mean, it doesn't completely answer the question. How do I write about a woman? Well, you know, I've been married 30 years. I've got sisters. I've got my mum. It's not like I've got lots of research material all around me. And I do know a lot of, as I say, I know a lot of great girls who were in the job, who were always up for a chat. And it's always great to bend their ear if I need some sort of female thinking.
Brilliant, brilliant. Now, there's a couple of really good questions. I'm not going to get to ask mine, but I don't care. I just love it when people are obviously engaged with what you're doing. Easy one to start with. Steve Jenkins asking, when does it come out?
August 20th.
August the 20th.
I believe it's coming out in paperback and Audible and ebook on that day. So it's only a couple of months to wait.
Awesome, brilliant. And then Justine's back again asking, did you start writing before or after you left the force?
Well, I wrote before, but never to a disciplined level. And when I was in the force, I didn't really have a lot of time to write. I always look back on it as a break in my creative life. However, when I rejoined civilian life and became a journalist, and at the same time I was hitting the bill with unsolicited scripts till they finally gave me a job writing for them. That's when I really learned to write. I was coached by what at the time was the best script department in television. So I owe a lot to them. But yeah, the writing bug was always there. It was there before I became a copper, and it was really raring to go when I left.
Beautiful, beautiful. Paul, I'm really sorry that we have to stop our conversation. This is the worst bit about this fabulous evening of always having to say, I'm really sorry. All the very best.
Thanks.
With one eye open. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
And look forward to seeing you again when we're allowed to gather.
Yeah, we'll get together again at some point, I'm sure. Thanks very much, Jackie, and thanks to all the rest of the guys behind the scenes.
You're welcome. Thanks for being with us.
Bye-bye.
Good night. Good old police procedural there, rattling along at a rate of knots. Have you all got your breath? And again, we're going to go and try and get back with Christopher now. I mentioned that he's based in Denmark and that he writes his stories are set in Greenland, and he has a most amazing protagonist in the police officer David Maratze. If you ever love to travel elsewhere in your reading, and if you love to travel to somewhere you've never been and you probably might never go, please get your hand on Christopher's books, because honestly, transported, no bother whatsoever, and fabulous stories. So, Christopher Peterson, are you with us in the room?
I hope so. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Yes, I can. No bother. Are you all right? Yeah.
I'm all right. Bit of a nightmare with all this tech, but
I think lockdown life has challenged us in so many ways, and wrangling tech is certainly one of them. Yeah. So, are you comfortable, my love? Are you all right? Yeah.
I'm comfortable. Yes, I'm ready to go.
Okay. So first of all, I mean, you told us in your bio that you spent quite a bit of time in Greenland teaching. When you were there, did you know then that you were going to write crime fiction around that space, or did that not happen until you left?
Well, I've always been writing, like a lot of your authors today. But when I was in Greenland, I actually started to study. So I took a Master of Arts in Professional Writing. And the tutors on the course in Falmouth, they thought it was exciting to think about the setting. And then I had a lot to do with police officers in Greenland. And we spend a lot of time, it's a difficult country in many respects. And so you meet in small communities, you meet everybody. And the teacher is actually a part of the community. And so I was sitting on like the social boards looking after or looking out for families in need. So there'd be the chief of police. I was a representative from the school. There was a representative from the hospital. So it made sense to combine all that into my stories.
I was going to say, when you said you'd had dealings with the police, it wasn't that, and well,
You do a lot of things for the first time in Greenland.
Okay. And if people read your books, they can find out those things, presumably.
We don't have to talk about them on live.
No. It's probably best not. Do you ever? I know at the moment it's not possible, but since you've left and you're living in Denmark, do you manage to get back often?
I haven't been back to Greenland since I was in Greenland for 7 years. We came back in 2013. I haven't been back since. One of the reasons is it's incredibly expensive to travel to Greenland. And then just if you go, you want to spend a good amount of time. So to be honest, that's the reason I'm writing. When you ask people what their inspiration is, I can't let go of Greenland. So I live Greenland every single day in my books, my stories. And Maratsi and Petra, the characters, I mean, they just keep Greenland alive for me.
There's a number of authors, and I think you fall into that category for me, that their writing is a love story. As much as it's crime fiction, it's a love story. And I really think that passion that you have for the place, that heartfelt thing, it comes out.
Why is it whenever we meet, one of us ends up crying? Both of us. But it's that love story. These books, they're my love story to Greenland. I mean, everything I've experienced in Greenland is poured into these books with the added dramatic element. It's a love letter. Every book is a love letter.
It's gorgeous. From which are you going to read to us tonight?
Well, I'd like to read from Seven Graves because it's probably the one that has made the most impact on my career. So, shall I just dive in?
Please, if you would. Yeah, please. Thank you, Christopher.
Okay, right from the start. Seven Graves, Chapter 1. They dug the graves on the mountain's knee, in the stubborn earth pinched between boulders of granite. The graveyard was small, but large enough to accommodate the mothers, fathers, sons, and daughters of Inusuk, from the time when the first grave replaced the last cairn, and babies that succumbed to the winter were no longer mummified. The winters were just as dark, the summers just as bright, but the deaths had slowed, and food, from the sea or the store, was easier to come by. But still they dug the graves each long summer in anticipation of each dark winter, when tuberculosis might take a grandparent or a grandchild, when a winter storm might take a hunter, or a depression might force someone to take their own life. They dug 2 graves for suicide, hoping they were too many. They dug one for a drunken brawl, one for a fishing accident, one for the stillborn child they knew was waiting in the tiny morgue of the medical centre, one terrible boat ride away. They dug a 6th grave for old age. The 7th they dug for cancer. Even in the Arctic, always cancer. The men climbed out of the suicide graves and leaned on their shovels, gazing out at the icebergs in the fjord. The graveyard commanded the best view of the mountains in the distance, and the settlement nestled in the lap of the mountain below them. Inusuk was trapped between 2 beaches, one black and soft, the other shingle, shell, and stone. The black beach faced south and east, breaking the waves and absorbing the energy of each storm, littered and glittered as it was with gobs of ice the size of gravediggers' hands, hearts, and heads. The larger ice debris, growlers, studded the beach and diverted the water running off the mountain and streaming into the sea. It was between 2 floating growlers that the girl's body would be found, a short distance from the beach that autumn. But at that moment, the gravediggers knew nothing. They shifted their gaze from the beach to the settlement, picking out the blistered red wood walls of the general store and the fresh green paint of the house owned by the Nature Commission, currently occupied by 2 Danish artists and 1 small child. One of the men nodded in the direction of the house, as the girl played in the sand and dirt beneath the deck. The 43 adult residents of Inusuk thought the two artists were lovers. The 12 children were too young to care, content with a new playmate, a girl with blonde hair. I thought I'd leave it at that.
Oh, who is the girl with the blonde hair? And do you know what? That piece to me just sums up how your writing uncovers a whole new culture and world for us. You know, that notion of 7 graves and why the 7. Now, I have to read, if you don't mind, Christopher. Jill Carr, if you can see it on your screen, has left us a lovely, lovely comment there. So she's visiting Arctic environments has been a real privilege for me. And I was recently drawn to the David Marazzi stories because of their Greenland setting, and was thrilled to discover that I have actually visited his hometown of, how do you say it? Thank you. Losing myself in the harsh but glorious Greenlandic environment of the Marazzi books has helped me cope with this lockdown situation.
That's why you write. That's why we write books. Thanks, Jill.
Yeah, thank you. What a beautiful comment. And so true. Look at that. You know, the fact that what comes from your heart touches people and has really helped people. And a question from Miriam Owen here about the different dialects and languages in Greenland. How different is it in different parts of the country?
There are 4 main dialects. So you've got the East, the West. West Greenlandic is the main spoken language. Then you've got a Southern dialect, and then you've got the Northern dialect, which is very similar to Inuktitut, which is in the far north. So I started to learn West Greenlandic, so I can say things like Sulivokpunga, Kaliklek, Kaliklak Nunat, Ukiok, Suve, which basically means I worked in Greenland for 7 years. So I learned that. But then I moved north, and it's a very different dialect where a lot of the words are very soft consonants. There aren't many vowels. There's lots of consonants. But it's the people that, I mean, you know, I'm tearing up again because it just reminds me of working with the kids and working with my colleagues. But I mean, anyone, Jill's been there to Ishla. You've got to go. I mean, I hope that's one of the other things. If I can get people interested in Greenland to visit and to give something, to bring something to that community, to experience the Greenlandic people's community and culture, that's what it's about.
Beautiful. And Andrew James Greig, fabulous comment, poetic writing.
Thank you.
Definitely.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, it's for Alan McKee. Hi, Alan. It's full of feeling and emotion. I wonder if I can ask you, what are you working on at the minute? And when can we get hold of more of your writing, or do you want to let people know, because you write lots of different kinds of things? Do you want to tell us about what's on offer if people haven't got hold of your work?
I think it's easy to say that I've written a lot about Greenland. I'm prolific. I write lots of books. I've probably got about 20 novels set in Greenland, and I've got about 25 novellas set in Greenland. Constable David Marazzi, because I like him so much, I wrote 20 novellas, which those are about 60 to 80 pages each. And I put a lot of what I experienced myself into those books. The novels are like a saga, like a Greenlandic saga. So they stretch across many books, and there'll be a 5th Marazzi story coming out, a novel in, I think it's in August. But I also do Advent crime books. So 24 chapters to fit with the 24 days of Christmas. And you know, the classic Christmas story where you don't know if Christmas is going to happen because the elves have to save Christmas. Well, in my books, it's a serial killer. And they're set in the future with a character called Petra Pitala Jensen. And we see her career from constable to commissioner through the course of my books. So, but can I just add one thing I'm asked, but forget to say sometimes, and before someone asks it, the 7 graves. People often wonder about them. When I lived in Umanak, they dug the graves in summer in preparation for the winter. So imagine walking around town and someone sizing you up for a coffin. It's that kind of feeling. So
Oh, yeah, yeah. Christopher, thank you so much for
thank
being
you.
with us this evening. I wish we could have a full evening, and I wish you could read to us some more. And I hope if you get the chance to come over and come and read for us, if you will. Yeah, in Edinburgh, that would be brilliant.
That
Yeah.
would be so much fun. Thanks to everyone here, and thanks to such wonderful authors I'm with tonight, and to everybody listening. Thank you.
Okay. See you soon. Bye, Sue. Bye. Bye. Oh, you see, who says crime fiction is cruel and mean? Well, some of it is. But then you get that crime fiction that has that poetic, emotional weight to it. And that's lovely too. Seriously, if you haven't got hold of Christopher's books, do, because you really are in for a treat. Well, now, I got so excited about Christopher that I'm forgetting where I'm going. Forgive me for a minute. I do believe, and we're a little bit out of order, but I do believe it's Helena Dixon. Now, Helena splits her time between the Black Country and Devon. She's married to the same man for over 35 years. Good going there. She has 3 daughters and a cactus called Spike, a crazy cockapoo, and a tank of tropical fish. I wonder how lockdown life has been going there. She's allergic to adhesives, apples, tinsel, and housework. Now, there's a fine set of prompts for a crime story. Her addiction of choice, a coffee, and reality TV. Now, before writing crime fiction, she was the winner of the Romance Prize in 2007 and Love Story of the Year in 2010 as Nell Dixon. She now writes historical 1930s set cozy crime as Helena Dixon. So please, everyone, will you welcome Helena into the room?
Hiya. Hi, Jack.
Hi, Helena. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you.
Thank you so much for waiting. I know sometimes coming at the end, it can be a bit, but you know, it's just so many amazing stories to hear. Now, so from romance to crime.
Yeah.
Why the change? What happened in your journey as an author? What made you think you were going to do that shift?
When I was writing romance, a lot of my, I wrote mainly contemporary romance, and quite a few of my books have got other elements to them. Quite a few of them have got suspense element or a bit of a crime element to them anyway. My father's actually a retired police inspector. So I've always sort of had an interest in crimes and mysteries and puzzles. I love Golden Age crime, which is why I particularly wanted to write in that era rather than modern day crime, because I enjoy Agatha Christie, the Father Brown sort of things, much more than the sort of harder, very sort of gory, visual type of story. And I think there's such a wide range within crime fiction that there's room to tell lots of different stories in lots of different ways. And that was the one that interested me the most.
Wonderful, thank you. So 1930s cozy crime. Tonight you're going to read to us from what novel?
I'm going to read from the first book in the Kitty Underhay series, which is Murder at the Dolphin Hotel. There's Murder at the Dolphin Hotel that's out now, Murder at Enderley Hall, and then the third book in the series, Murder at the Playhouse, is out on the 30th of June. Murder on the Dance Floor should be out in October, so people have got a fair few to go at if they're interested in that sort of thing. So I thought I'd start the first in the series, and then at least you get to meet Kitty.
That's great. That's great, because if we've not had the chance yet, you know, to get to know you as a crime writer, we may have known you as a romance writer, but it's great for you to, you know, to bring us this protagonist. So please take it away.
Okay, so this is Murder at the Dolphin Hotel. It starts with an excerpt in the Torbay Herald, the 10th of June 1916, Dartmouth, England. A reward is offered for information regarding the disappearance of local Dartmouth mother of one, Mrs. Eloed Underhay. Mrs. Underhay, aged 27, was last seen 2 weeks previously when she was thought to have departed from Kingswear Station to visit friends near London. She has not been heard from since, and her family and friends are keen to rid themselves of her safety. She was not thought to be in low spirits or to have any financial difficulties at the time of her disappearance. Mrs. Underhay is described as 5'2", blonde with blue eyes, and was dressed in a rose pink travelling costume with grey hat and gloves. Any information to be given to Mrs. Treadwell, the Dolphin Hotel, the Embankment, Dartmouth. Dartmouth, 1933. Kitty Underhay was on reception duty at her grandmother's hotel. Outside the revolving doors lay a fresh, sunlit afternoon. Inside the lobby there was the scent of beeswax and lavender, with dust motes floating in the air. They fetched a body out the river this morning, Cora murmured to Kitty as she whisked her duster across the top of the reception desk. The older woman glanced around the lobby to check there were no guests within earshot before continuing with her tale. Foreigner. Dutch, they said, and it looks a bad business. Constable told me he'd had his head bashed in. Cora, really? Kitty glared at her employee. You are the limit. Cora loved a tidbit of gossip, and in a small, sleepy riverside town like Dartmouth, foul play on this scale was unusual to say the least. She bustled around the desk, her round middle-aged face avid with glee at being the bearer of news. Police is searching the banks down by the lower ferry. Mr. Fargion found him in the water when he went to open up his booth. Says he thought it were a dead dog, so he fetched a long stick, and there were a face looking back up at him, all glassy-eyed and weed-covered. The maid's stout frame shuddered at the thought. Kitty sighed. Once Cora got started, it was difficult to stop her, but she had to admit that her curiosity was piqued, even if she could have done without the details. As in any town that had a high number of holidaymakers and boats calling into port, one expected some issues, especially with the Naval College on the hill at the edge of the town. Even so, a murder, especially of a stranger, was indeed news. You can't trust foreigners. Cora pursed her lips and rubbed at an imaginary spot in front of the visitor's ledger. I heard as well that, whatever else she was about to add was left unsaid, as Kitty's grandmother, small and elegant in a tweed suit, silk blouse and pearls, swept up to the reception area. I think the desk is clean enough now, Cora, thank you. And Kitty, dear, please pay attention to your work. You need to pay more notice when you're on duty at the front desk. People expect high standards at the Dolphin. Cora tucked her duster into the pocket of her starched white apron and hurried away, clearly piqued at not being able to finish her tale. Kitty couldn't decide whether to laugh or sigh as she tore her gaze away from the bustling river scene on the embankment outside the hotel. She wondered how many of the day visitors had been on the far end of the river, watching the police activity by the lower ferry. Sorry, Grams.
Oh, thank you for transporting us to another time, all together. The pace of that, it was just so beautiful to contemplate and then be introduced to this character. Now, Louise Cannon is echoing some of the things I've been thinking. First of all, Louise, I just want to say, so good to have some new cozy crime titles. And Kirsten Mackenzie as well, down there in New Zealand, says, loving the titles. But the question being then, the inspiration for these locations?
I spend a lot of time in Devon. I've spent, for years now, we've been going there. And now I spend between a third to half of the year there usually. Mm-hmm. I know that area really well. And the area around, all the books are set around Dartmouth, Torbay, Exeter. And it gives rise to a lot of different interesting scenarios. The first book is set mainly around Dartmouth. The Dolphin Hotel is set in Dartmouth. So you've got the geographical difficulties of that you have to cross the Dart on the ferry or go the long way round by road, which in the 1930s took a bit more time and planning if you wanted to go anywhere. Murder at Enderley Hall is actually set near a place called Newton St Sires, which is just outside Exeter. And the third book has got a bit of Exeter in it as well, although it deals a lot really with the pavilion, which is on Torquay seafront. People can go there. Sadly, it's all closed and off now, so you can only see it from the outside. But it's a spectacular building, and it's in its heyday. It was a very popular opera house and small playhouse to go to. So it's a way of sort of bringing some of these things back to life. Architecture is always fascinating, especially old buildings. That area, there are some incredible places like Oldway Mansion in Paynton, for instance, which hopefully they're going to be able to restore soon. And it's great to sort of put them back to where they were in the 1930s, when they were full of life and people, and to visualize those things. So I do a lot of research for those.
And the Dolphin Hotel, is it a hotel that you've been in somewhere, or have you created this hotel?
I created the hotel. There are Dartmouth is an interesting mix of buildings, from Georgian to 13th century to Victorian workers' cottages. And the Dartmouth Hotel is based on a big half-timbered building that actually stands within Dartmouth, but it's never actually been a hotel. But it could be a hotel. Could be a hotel. So I borrowed it. Dartmouth people have been wonderful, actually, and very kind at letting me fictionalise great big chunks of their town when I needed to.
Julie's just sent in a question as well that is really, I think, especially, writing. You're writing now, but you're writing about then. And do you feel you need to be careful with prejudice and taboos that would have been rife in those days?
Yes, I don't shy away from those. Murder at the Dolphin Hotel touches on the issues that were going on in America at the time. One of my characters is a Black American jazz singer who's married to a white man, and she pretends she's not married for all kinds of reasons. It talks about prohibition. It touches on the gangster issue that was going on in America. Murder at the Playhouse, which is the one that's coming out in June, touches on homosexuality and the issues that were going on around then. You have to be real about what was going on, but you have to handle it very sensitively as well. Murder at Enderley Hall, one of my characters is Jewish, and obviously at that time it was a time Hitler had just come to power in Europe, and people were becoming very uneasy about the prospect of another war, and they could see things were starting to happen. So I had to do a lot of research, be true to the time, but be sensitive to how things have changed and how people perceive things today, but still show what was happening to those.
Thank you so much for that answer. And like you say, dealing with issues that were very much part of life then, and I think it's good to explore as well, because it's that sense of, have we changed? Have we moved on? Are we different? So there are three or four books in the series.
There are two that are out now. One coming out 30th June, and a fourth one I've literally just sent it off to my editor, and possibly going to be a fifth. We're not sure yet. We're talking about that one.
Okay, and I'm gonna a question from Kirsten. I assume that there are a lot of hotels in Devon, and did you have to check that a Dolphin Hotel did or didn't exist?
Oh, I checked to make sure. There are other Dolphin hotels, but not that I've been able to find around there. Although interestingly, after I'd actually written the book, my parents started to laugh and said they'd actually had their honeymoon at a Dolphin Hotel, but it was in real. I mean, I never knew that.
It's been within you even since when. So I'm going to ask you one last question, and I'm sorry to have to let you go. But Kitty, as a character, have you changed the way you feel about her as you've developed the writing?
No, she's a very interesting character because the running theme through the book is she's trying to solve what happened to her mother. She disappeared when she was 6 in 1916. So she's trying to pick up a trail that's been cold for a long, long time. And she straddles two worlds because she sees herself as an independent modern woman of 1933, but it's obviously not our idea of a modern independent woman.
Yeah.
But she's quite a feisty character, really. But she can mix with sort of the lower social class as well as the more country house, grand echelons of society as well. And she sort of sits in the middle of those worlds. And it was a time of great social change, really. So it's quite an interesting character to write. So she does develop quite a lot of things as she goes along.
Wonderful. Listen, Helena, I would probably never have ventured. It's not the normal thing that I don't usually read that because I'm usually reading things from Scandi Noir and things like that. But I tell you, I am going to be getting hold of that, and I'm going to be sharing it with my mum as well, because I think Kitty is just perfect. So thank you for that. All the very best, yeah. And if you can I keep saying this to people, but when we're allowed to travel, if you can get up to Edinburgh, please come up and read to us up here, yeah?
That would be lovely. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Bye.
Good night for now. Bye. Oh, you see, this is the beauty of crime fiction, that it takes us in time and space and place, different styles. So good. We don't have to just be fit into one box. Beautiful, beautiful. So now then, our next author. Well, it's Sarah L. King. Not sure how many people of you out there have read Sarah, but I think you might want to be getting in there if you hadn't. Now, Sarah is a writer from West Lothian, and her books include a historical fiction trilogy about the Pendle Witches and 2 contemporary mystery novels. Now, her latest book, The House at Kirtlebeck, or The House at Kirtlebeck End, is a paranormal suspense brimming with dark secrets, unsolved disappearances, and things that go bump in the night. So as the darkness falls, please, everyone, welcome Sarah L. King.
Hello. Hi, Jackie.
Hello. Hi, Sarah. You've got those earphones on again that give me
I have.
envy. You do. You do. What a marvellous set of earphones there. Tonight, Sarah, what are you going to read to us from?
I'm going to read to you from The House at Kirtlebeck End, which is my most recent novel. It came out in December, the end of last year. And thank you for introducing it very well. Would you like me to tell you a little bit about it first before I launch into reading? Or?
I think you should. That'd be really good. Yep. But what I'll do is, if Kelly will take me off the screen, and so viewers can just concentrate on you while you tell us. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Right. So tonight I'll read from The House at Kirtlebeck End, which is here. It is a paranormal mystery novel. It's set across 2 timelines and has 2 main protagonists. Part of the story takes place in 1972 when a family moved to a house in Kirtlebeck in southwest Scotland, which is a fictional place. And the other part of the story takes place in 2018 when a descendant of that family inherits this house. Now in 1972, a strange disappearance had occurred, and in 2018 rather, the granddaughter, a young lady called Harriet, is trying to unravel family mysteries, and as Jackie mentioned, there is a ghost or 2 in there as well. So I'm going to read from the prologue, about halfway through the prologue. The prologue concerns Eleanor, who is the other protagonist. It begins in October 1972, and Eleanor, who is Harriet's grandmother, is just about to walk into the police station because she has something to tell them. So I'll begin. My steps slow as I reach the police station. I look up, drawing an uneven breath as the blue and white sign above the door catches my eye. This is somewhere I never thought I'd have to go. This is something I never thought I'd have to do. And yet, here I am, walking into this red brick building on a miserable autumn afternoon, about to tell a perfect stranger that he has gone. I will start crying again, no doubt, and they will sympathise. They will offer me tissues, perhaps a cup of tea. I will sob out my sorry story, and they will think they understand how my world has fallen apart and how badly I need some help. But they won't understand, not really. My world is in pieces. My family is destroyed, but they can't fix it. No one can. They can investigate. They can try to find him, but I already know that it won't be enough. No one can help me now. I push open the door, ready to tell someone something, ready to hold back almost everything. The man behind the counter looks up at me, his expression at once suspicious and inquisitive as I approach. The light inside is yellow and dim, and I know it makes me look as ghastly as I feel. I reach into my pocket, pulling out a damp tissue and wiping my running nose. I shiver, my drenched clothes sticking uncomfortably to my skin. Momentarily, I contemplate whether I will catch a chill after today. Maybe I will become so sick and feverish that I will die. Given everything I've been through and everything I must still face, I'm tempted to think that that would be for the best. Then I remember that I'd be leaving Anna alone, and I can't abandon Anna. All we have is each other now. I pull my coat tighter around me, teasing the collar up higher around my throat, hiding scars, erecting defences. Not for the first time. I promise myself, my coat is scruffy, well worn, just like the rest of my clothes. Not for the first time, I promise myself a new coat, a new wardrobe, a new me once this is all over. The man studies me, his grey eyes growing wider with empathy as he catches proper sight of my grim expression. He's only young, fair-haired and tall, but with a slight build. I always imagined policemen to be bigger, but then I haven't met that many in my time. I wonder what he makes of me, standing here, rain-soaked and carrying the weight of the world on my shoulders. I wonder if he's looking for clues, trying to guess what I might have seen, what I might have heard, what I might have done, or what might have been done to me. Oh, the stories I could tell him, if only I had the nerve. Stories he couldn't dream of, stories he couldn't decipher with a mere scrutinising gaze. But I'm not here for any of that. I'm here to say one thing, and nothing more. Can I help you, madam? His voice is heavy with curiosity, and I can see he hasn't quite made up his mind about me. I could be a victim, a witness, a perpetrator, poised to confess. I could be all three. It's so hard to tell just from looking at someone. I should know that better than most.
Oh, and it just makes you want to, what's she going to say and what is it about? I have to ask you to start off with, though, the notion of choosing paranormal aspects, because I know often, you get the people who say, and it's got to be to each his own and or her own, and what works for you as a reader. But often people say, oh, the blending of genre doesn't necessarily work or fit. But for you, why did you need to do that?
I have a bit of a fascination, I suppose, with the paranormal, and I like mixing genres anyway. So I like to kind of blend things together. One of the hardest things I find actually is to define my book. It's something I'm trying to get better at. When somebody asks me, what kind of book is it? I go, well, it's got this and it's got that, but for the paranormal aspect of it, I suppose it's just something I've always been really interested in, which is weird because I'm actually terrified of watching ghost horror movies and I can't tolerate them at all. But I love a ghost story. I just can't handle the visuals, but I love reading and certainly writing ghost stories. So I think for me, I like mysteries anyway. I like unanswered questions, and I like posing those to readers and letting their imaginations run wild as I unravel it through the book. But I like adding that element of something else, and I suppose for this, paranormal felt the right fit. Yeah.
Do you find though that you need to hold yourself back? In that sense of not going too far, not so that it doesn't spill over and become purely paranormal. I mean, that sense of measuring the aspect through the narrative.
Yeah, and I suppose making sure that the paranormal and the mystery actually do gel together, rather than it just becomes a bit of a creepy novel.
Yeah.
That can be quite a challenge actually, and not letting that one particular genre take over, if you like, so it becomes kind of pure paranormal. The key to it still for me is the mystery aspect. So it's making sure that suspense, that putting little bits of information, feeding things through the book, but also letting people, readers, perhaps, make up their own minds about what they think is going on. They get halfway through and think, oh, I think it's this, or I think it's them, or, that's the bit that really drives me. And I just try to make sure that the paranormal adds to that rather than takes away from it. But that can be challenging, just to keep it the right amount of creepy, if you like. So.
Yeah, but not to be over creepy, as it were. The house at Kirtlebeck End, is it a property that you are familiar with? I mean, have you visited a place that inspired?
Yes.
Can you tell us?
Yes, this book was probably more than any of my other books very setting driven. So often with other things I've written, you mentioned it, I've written historical fiction. So those are very character driven books. It was the characters in those stories that drove me to write them and tease those things out. With this book, the setting came before the characters. And actually I stayed one Christmas a few years ago in a lovely, beautiful old house in a little place called Waterbeck, which is in southwest Scotland, which I fictionalize the name slightly for the book, hence where Kirtlebeck came from. Now, the house at Kirtlebeck End in the story is not like for like exactly the same as this place. I did change some things about the setting to better fit the story, particularly the isolation that I wanted to build around this property, because that's really key to a lot of its mysteries as well. But when I was staying in this house a couple of Christmases ago, I was really quite taken with the atmosphere, and it wasn't actually a creepy house at all, but it was very old, it was Victorian, it was beautiful, and it got me thinking about the stories that places hold or can hold. That really fascinates me, the idea of stories in objects, stories in places, and that was really where the first kind of little inkling of this story came from, as to what could take place in a house like that, and really that's where I started, and obviously as time went on developed it into this multi-generational family mystery, if you like, of unraveling dark secrets from a past that until you inherit this place you didn't necessarily know about it. Yeah.
So I've got a question from Elaine Keast, who was on before, and she wants to know, why do you like writing in the first person?
Thank you. That's a good question. It's not where I began writing, actually. When I first began writing, all my historical novels are in the third person, but oddly, both of my contemporary novels are in the first person. I really enjoyed when I sort of almost instinctively embraced that with my first contemporary novel. I really enjoy that closeness with particular character. Now, whether that character is the character I remain with, or like in this book, it's actually two characters that I focus in on in that first person gaze. Also find that for a mystery, it works very well because you are only seeing that person's viewpoint. It's very easy to hold things, well, not very easy, but it's easier to hold things back, because you're only seeing what they know and what they're experiencing. So for me, I find personally that works really well for this sort of genre, for the building that mystery and that suspense, because you really are just getting that one person's eye view of the world and what's unraveling before their eyes, so to speak.
Lovely. And going forward,
Mhm.
Are you going paranormal, or are you going historical? What?
Well,
Hmm.
I'm at a very early stage with this at the moment. This past year, I have been writing, but at a much slower pace. I've actually been doing a bit of creative writing study as well. So, but I've just recently finished that, and I'm about to embark on my next project, which actually really combines a lot of the different elements of what I've done so far. So I'm currently researching about late Georgian Edinburgh, because I have an idea around a historical mystery set in that period, focusing actually on a sort of amateur sleuthing psychic. So
Yeah.
again, bringing in those paranormal elements, which I just don't seem to be able to help myself but include. But I'm really keen to write something historical, further historical. Obviously, this book is partly set in the 1970s, but I'm quite keen to head back a couple of centuries. And for me, I have actually just by sort of chance over the past few months been doing quite a bit of reading about that at a time when Edinburgh's new town was being built and developed. And I'm really quite interested in that particular time in the city. Again, quite setting driven, but also bringing in some, they're at an early stage, but I think quite interesting characters, and a very evocative time. So
yeah, and look at that, you've got a reader who even just mentioning the notion. So Julie Wolfe there saying it sounds an exciting premise. It really does, and I would love to say, Sarah, please come to Edinburgh when you can.
Yes,
and
I
if
would love to.
and if you can read to us from that novel that is on the way with it, with the setting and everything, I think it will be very apt.
Good, super. Yeah, I would love to.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Awesome. Hey, thank you for reading for us this evening, and thank you for joining us, and hope to see you soon. Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Thank you.
No
Bye.
worries. Bye. How you all doing? Hope you're well. Moving on. Lovely set of authors that we've got here for you towards the end. You see, try and keep just the flow of great tales, and people who are willing to talk about their process as well, just so we get that backstory as to how a novel. Joanne Baird, totally. Please, I hope that Sarah King will come back and read to us from that. So, our next author is David Hutchinson. Now, he was brought up in Lochinver in the Highlands. He's a self-taught filmmaker, and he wrote and directed the independent feature Graders in 2012. It's a medical crime thriller, and you can see it on Amazon Prime. He wrote the YA novella Storm Hags, and The Book of Skulls is his first novel. So everyone, please welcome David Hutchinson.
Hi.
Hey, David, how are you doing?
I'm fine. How are you?
Doing all right. Can I just say I love your background there, the painting. Is that a painting on the wall? Look at that.
That's a painting from one of the scenes in my book. Your last writer was talking about psychics. That's set in a séance. There's a séance scene in my story.
Oh, I love.
But there's not a séance. There's not a séance detective. I mean, a psychic detective. So.
Yeah, but I love the link there without even making the link. I love that we've had a link. That's beautiful. So, are you going to read to us from the Book of Skulls?
Yeah. I've decided to read a different bit that was originally going to this because the bit I was going to write before give too much away. So this is it's less gory. It's a wee bit more funny. So I'll read it now.
Yes, please do, David. It's all yours.
Okay. It's from this chapter called Molly. The main character, Liz, and her friend Amelia are two women trying to become doctors at the medical school in the 1870s, and they're the only women trying to be doctors. Right, let's start here. Wilton looked around the surgeon's hall garden, all clear. He opened the door and waved the piece of bread at the university mascot, Molly, a fluffy Cheviot sheep. Molly trotted forward. Walton slowly walked backwards into the corridor. Molly stopped. Walton waved the bread again. He tempted Molly forward, down the corridor towards the wide staircase. Walton slowly moved up the staircase. Molly didn't seem to want to climb stairs. Walton slowly descended a few steps and held out the bread. Molly climbed a few steps. Walton gently coaxed the sheep up the staircase to the top. He moved towards the main door of the Playfair Hall. At the door, he dropped the bread. He opened the door very slowly and left it open a tiny fraction. He edged slowly down the corridor past Molly. She was nervous of him, but she really wanted the bread. She moved past him and went for the bread. Walton crept back to the top of the staircase. Suddenly, he rushed towards the sheep with his arms outstretched and thumped his shoes on the floor. Molly panicked and ran forward. She shot out the corridor, down, knocking the door wide open into a large hall. She rushed across the room, knocking into chairs and sending them flying. Liz and Amelia were shocked by Molly's sudden appearance, but managed to move out the sheep's path. Dr. Nicholson wasn't so lucky. He staggered out the way and fell awkwardly onto the floor. He screamed as his arm snapped. Molly bolted across the room. Liz and Amelia rushed over to the doctor. "Let me see," said Liz. She crouched down and tried to roll up the doctor's sleeve. He winced in pain. "I think it's broken," said Dr. Nicholson. "Have you got scissors?" asked Liz. "In the drawer over there," said Dr. Nicholson. "Amelia," commanded Liz. Amelia racked through the drawer and brought out a pair of scissors. Liz quickly cut up the sleeve to the elbow, revealing the white shirt underneath. "No blood, that's good," said Liz. She carefully cut the shirt sleeve. The doctor grimaced in pain. "Oh my God," said the doctor as Liz examined the bruised area. "I think the ulna is fractured. Displaced, Amelia?" said Liz. Amelia inspected the doctor's arm. She nodded to Liz. "At least it's not an open fracture." "Oh God, the bone will have to be aligned," exclaimed the doctor. "We can go and find a doctor," said Liz. "There's a better chance of reducing any complications if we do this right now," said Dr. Nicholson. "I don't know if I can," said Liz. "Do it," said Dr. Nicholson. Liz said, "Amelia, can you find something used as a splint?" Amelia ran towards some cupboards and rummaged through them. She found a couple of wooden rulers and a dusting cloth. She rushed back with them. Liz placed one of the rulers along the underside of the doctor's arm. Liz readied herself. "Perhaps we should wait," asked Liz. Dr. Nicholson fainted. "He's out. Let's do it now," said Liz. She quickly felt along the arm for the fracture. She found it and moved the two bones back into alignment. Liz put the other ruler along the top of his arm. Meanwhile, Amelia ripped the cloth into shreds. She wound the strips around the rulers, stretching Dr. Nicholson's arm, binding the makeshift splits together. Dr. Nicholson groaned and came to. Liz said, "All done. I'll fetch Dr. Blythe. You'll need something for the pain." I think that's enough for that.
David, thank you. The medical link, we've had dental earlier, and now we're here with medical. But I wanted to start by asking you about the title of the book, The Book of Skulls. Yeah. Why that?
The story is about somebody who's obsessed with phrenology. So it's the study of people think they can tell traits of a person by their skull. It's a kind of quack science that came about in the 1830s, and it resurged every now and again. So I don't know why I found out about that. I think, I don't know really.
But because I think it's an interesting premise, but so apt for the time in which the story is set, and also the idea that you have those female protagonists who want to be something that it was difficult to be. Mm-hmm. So you add that extra element. Why was it important for you to write female protagonists rather than have male protagonists be in those parts?
All my work seems to be like that. My film Graders was about two women, and I was looking for a new thing to write, and I heard about the Edinburgh Seven just by accident. The 7 women that went to be doctors in 1869. And when I was reading about them, I found out there was another woman in, I think it was 18, 14, and 15, who disguised herself as a man and became a doctor called James Miranda Barry. Her real name was Margaret Buckley, I think. And I combined the ideas of the two stories because Margaret Ann Buckley James Miranda Barry spent all her life as a man, and she had a black servant, and the servant would have known, you know, because dressing her and everything that to look like a man. Yeah. And then I found out after this person died that they thought she might have had a child. So I thought, well, what would it be like if I did the story about this child that grows up, an orphan girl, mixed race orphan girl, that tries to come to Edinburgh. And I also wanted to make it so that it was, there was gay characters, you know, like bisexual gay characters and BAME characters as well, rather than just white Victorians.
Yes. Yeah.
So that was the...
I love that notion of wanting to sort of like explode the constraints maybe of previous iterations of stories set at a certain time. I think that's really powerful. Will you be taking these characters on after the Book of Skulls?
Yeah, I've got ideas written out for about 4 books, but I only like a couple of pages. The real life, the Edinburgh 7, they weren't allowed to get their degrees in Edinburgh, and some of them had to move to London and then later on to Paris and Bonn and places like that. So hopefully the next book will still be set in Edinburgh, but the one after that I might have to learn up about Paris. So got lots of more research to do. But I didn't want to make it too much the real people, but I'm following them to get inspiration, really.
I think as Tana says, I love the sound of David Hutchinson's book. Yeah, I totally agree with you, Tana.
Cheers,
and I'm really looking forward to see what you do with these women. You know, as you say, the idea of the Edinburgh 7 went on, had to go elsewhere, and so what happens to them in these other places? You know, that again, that it's not a one-off. They are stories that will continue.
But they're fictional. They're not Edinburgh 7, but by characters. Fiction.
Oh yeah, totally. But that idea of it's very, I think it's that we can draw, you know, our conclusions that, you know, and yeah, I like that. Would you ever write anything contemporary?
Well, the young adult novel Stormhags was contemporary, it was set now. But it was inspired by somebody you're talking about, the Anthrax Island, Grynia Island earlier. It was inspired by that, actually.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. Honestly, this program was put together without thinking of any of these connections. I love it. Yeah. Okay. David, I'm really sorry that we can't spend more time just with other authors and needing to move on. But when we're allowed to be out and about, will you come to Edinburgh and read in real life?
I live in Edinburgh anyway, so it's just down the road from me. I'd love to come.
Excellent. So it's no bother to get to the wash bar, yeah?
Thanks very much.
It's a pleasure, David. All the best, yeah?
Bye.
Good night. Bye. Wow, these connections that we never even planned. I love it. So, on to our next author, Catherine Fiennes. Now, Catherine is a writer from Liverpool, and a best-selling Reprobation trilogy of gothic crime thrillers, published by Darkstroke Books, is set in the city Reprobation. Consuming fire and sound are police procedurals, with a supernatural twist, featuring cynical young detective inspector Darren Swift, who forms an unlikely alliance with a nun and a death metal guitarist. Yes, you heard me correctly. A detective, a nun, and a death metal guitarist. Fabulous cocktail. Reprobation has had the honour of being adapted as a music album by a heavy metal band. So, our penultimate author, Catherine Fiennes, welcome to the room.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
I can indeed. Thank you for waiting.
Thank you for having me.
No,
I finished my wine. I've been waiting all the time. I finished my wine now. I need another glass.
You are allowed to have more so long as it doesn't impede your reading. Okay,
no,
excellent. I can see guitars on the back wall there. Are you a heavy metal guitarist?
I'm a heavy metal fan,
Mm.
and I am an improver at guitar, let's say. I started to learn late in life, but it's my sort of early midlife crisis. So yeah, I love my guitars. And there's lots of guitar stuff in my books as well. Yeah,
Yeah, and because the bit that Reprobation it had been adapted as a music album by a heavy metal band. I'm not sure how many authors have got that kind of claim to fame.
Yeah, it was really cool. That was probably the coolest thing that's happened since I became a writer, actually. I was contacted by a couple of guys who have a band called Jiva, and they'd read the first book, Reprobation, and it connected with them, and they were inspired to compose some music based on it. And that was just a dream come true for me, because I'm a music journalist and a musician, and the books have so much music in them. So I couldn't have asked for more, really. And they came up with this, which is Reprobation, the album. And they're currently in the studio writing the second book in the trilogy as well. So yeah, that's really cool.
Wow. So when you go out, when we're allowed out, and you go to festivals or to book launches, do you take their music with as well? Is it sort of...
We haven't done any events yet, but we should do something. Because I think a lot of people would quite like to have the book and the CD and sort of combine the two, because it's quite unusual, actually. So yeah, definitely when this whole nightmare ends and get back to live events, that would be a really good idea. Yeah.
I think it would, yeah, that you read and you have the music, a different kind of immersive experience. That'd be,
yeah, definitely.
So tonight, what are you going to read to us from?
So I thought I'd read from my new book, which is called Sounds, because I haven't done a reading from that before. Sound is the third book in the trilogy. It can be read as a standalone, but it does sort of follow the journey of my protagonists from the beginning. So yeah, shall I go ahead?
Please do, Catherine. Yeah.
Cool. So this is a book about psychoacoustics and about the connections between sound and paranoia and how we process sound. And that, I thought that was a really interesting way to approach a detective story. And I struggled to find a passage that didn't have sex, violence, swearing, or dialogue, because I can't do the accents. And that left about 2 pages in the whole book. So here we go. Dr. Ian Springer had cancelled his midday lecture and driven home to think. He needed to be away from the acoustics department, needed to be alone in the empty house while his wife and kids were out. The quiet street of Delaware Lane in Edinburgh was virtually empty, its residents all at work or school. He paced up and down his kitchen a few times before pouring himself a whiskey. Surely he could extricate himself from this now. Surely these people weren't dangerous, not to him. It had been so exciting, the chance to take his research further than any military authority would have allowed, but it had gone too far now. He would even give the money back, or at least some of it. He wasn't gambling anymore. He would tell his wife about the debts, she would forgive him, and they would remortgage, work it out. As for the technology he'd developed, he was sure that Ollie didn't have the capabilities to take it any further. But it was unfortunate, the damage that had been done. If only he had been honest with himself from the beginning. If only he'd been honest with himself from the beginning. Nielsen was dead, and it was his fault. Leaning against the kitchen counter, he noticed that the whiskey in his glass had started to bubble slightly. He hoped it was due to his shaking hand, but when he placed the glass down, the bubbling continued. He began to detect a whirring sensation, as if there was a ceiling fan or an air conditioning unit nearby. As an acoustics professor, he was attuned to vibrations such as these. Was it the vacuum cleaner through the wall to the semi-detached house next door? The drill of building work further down the street? A helicopter nearby? The rumble of a train? But the whir became a rumble, became a pressure. He could hear it and yet not hear it. He could hear everything and nothing at the same time. He felt the whiskey in his stomach bubble and fizz, the pulsing of blood in his veins, as if the blood itself was bubbling. He felt a sense of impending doom so powerful it almost knocked him off his feet. And then his eyeballs began to vibrate uncontrollably, so he ran to the mirror in the hallway to look at himself, and he saw them moving by themselves, bulging. He lurched up the stairs, grasping for the banister as best he could. If he was going to die, at least he could get the money out of its hiding place first, for his wife to find. But realizing it was too late, He pivoted back towards the front door. Perhaps he'd be safer out in the street. As he teetered on the stair, the pressure within his body suddenly increased exponentially, and his lungs were crushed. He had already suffocated when his skull collapsed in on itself, splattering brains and bone across the white plaster walls and the carpet. His headless body remained upright as it slipped down one carpeted stair. Then it took a final, macabre step forward before it crumpled and tumbled down into the hallway.
Oh, the stuff of nightmares, Catherine. I'll be sleeping with the bedside light on tonight after that. Research, I mean, just the whole thing screams to me of research. You said you were a music journalist. Yeah.
Yes.
So the whole thing of the notion of vibrations and acoustics and things like that, is it a specialist field of yours?
Not specifically, no. The research actually is a really important aspect to me. The first book was a lot about genetics and religion, and so I did all sorts of research about that. And the second book had a lot of historical dual timeline aspects. And then this book, I really got into psychoacoustics. So it was linked with my work because I was looking into why people love music so much, why they're so affected by it, and musicology. So the research is really important, but it's definitely a challenge to stop your research and not let it take over the story, because there's nothing worse than when you can tell an author is just showing off about how much they've learned. So it's a real challenge to weave it in and let the reader focus on the story and the characters.
Julie Wolfe said, wowzers. That was actually my total thought as you were, the build up there to what happened. I thought you said you were going to stick away from gory things. So. Yeah. So, but let me ask you. So, the trilogy, when you began your writing, did you have it already set out that this would be a trilogy, or did it take you to a trilogy?
Yeah, definitely the latter. In fact, when I started writing the first book, Reprobation, I didn't even know that it was going to be a novel and b a crime fiction novel. I just had this concept in my mind about predestination and this vision for the first scene of a body being crucified on a Liverpool beach. And I had certain ideas that I wanted to explore for myself. And then as I was writing about them, a story developed around them and the characters sort of wrote themselves into it. And I realized really quickly that I was writing a crime thriller. And then it was a fully formed story. But when I got to the end, I realized that I wanted to see where the characters would go next. I felt they were just the beginning, their journey and their relationships. And so it all happened very naturally, but it certainly wasn't what I planned at the beginning now.
I love it, that notion of, a creative thread that when you start to pull and it takes you further than you probably envisaged.
Yeah, definitely. And it was very, very natural. And one of the most amazing things to me as a new author, because Reprobation was my first novel, was the way that the characters sort of created their own, they were sort of speaking, they were making up their own dialogue. I didn't really have to think, the words were just coming out. And that was just an amazing experience. And that was why when I got to the end of the book, I realized that they still had to continue their arc. And I felt like it would be wrong to stop. And I guess that's how these crime series work, because your detective does have to go on his or her journey.
Yeah. And so are you done now with that? And will you create a new world or a new set of characters?
The trilogy is quite fully formed in that you could read that and you could have a resolution. But there's definitely scope for the characters to continue. And I know I've got a lot of people waiting for book 4 and asking me when I'm going to write book 4. So I am going to write book 4. I've actually just written something completely different. My last manuscript was a standalone historical novel. So I took a break from the Reprobation series, but I'm planning to start book 4 soon, yeah.
And I think it's, other authors that I know, especially people who write, series or police procedurals or things, doing that thing of having a standalone, every now and again, just to give your mind a chance to,
I
go
think so.
elsewhere.
Definitely. It was really refreshing to do something completely different and give my Liverpool story a break. And hopefully when I go back to it, and I've got loads of ideas for the next book, it will come back fresh and I'll be ready. So yeah.
Christopher Peterson's just been back on, just to say to you, Catherine, my wife jumped during your reading.
Oh. Oh, it gets much worse.
Oh,
that was quite a soft little scene there.
Soft. Okay. Can I ask who you published with?
Darkstroke.
Darkstroke, that's right, yeah.
Originally Crooked Cat. So when I signed with them, it was Crooked Cat, and Crooked Cat is now rebranding as Darkstroke and focusing on dark fiction. And they are an indie publisher, really small and quite maverick. And I was just so lucky that they took me on, because what I write is quite cross-genre, and a lot of the big publishers struggle to fit you into a category. Yeah. So I was really lucky that they decided to take a chance, because people seem to really like the book. It was just, getting in there. And so I'm really, really grateful for that opportunity. But being with an indie means that there's a lot of marketing and distribution that falls to the author, which I really enjoy. But it's important to carve out that time for writing as well. I know.
I just wanted to ask, because I know getting hold of paper copies isn't always easy at the minute. Are you on Kindle? Are the books available there?
Yes, Kindle and paperback. Amazon is my main source, for better or worse. Getting the books into bookshops is a huge challenge.
Yeah.
And I've been really lucky because my books are so local to Liverpool. There's a few independent bookshops in Liverpool. Shout out to Right Blends and Pritchard's, and from nowhere, because you're really dependent on the independent bookshops taking a chance on you as well, because you don't have the big distributors putting you in Waterstones and that kind of thing. But yeah, the vast majority of crime fiction readers are e-readers now. So I would say 90-something% of my books are ebooks.
Ebooks, yeah. Catherine, again, I've said to other authors, when we can, and if you were able, I know because time and things like that, but if you could head up the road,
I would love to.
Yeah, and come up to Edinburgh and read for us, and and because I think we deserve to be terrified again in real life. Is that all right? Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I'd love to.
Thank you so much, and all the very best. Yeah.
Thank you, and cheers. I'm going to get some more wine now.
Cheers. Go get the wine. Bye for now. Oh, wine. I feel like I need smelling salts after that. Yeah, Sarah, isn't it so? Catherine describes the challenges for indies really well. It really is. These are tricky times, and I think if, as a reader, you have a favorite indie bookstore or indie publisher, just give them some love and give them some support. We really need that, because our stories need to be told and need to be got out there, because it's those stories that keep us going. Yeah, James King, one thing this COVID-19 issue has taught me, it's go local. It really is, and I hope we continue to do that, even when we're beyond this. I think that's really, really important. Well, we've come to that moment, the last author for the night, and I'm always really grateful for that last author and their patience until we get here. And it's Alex Nye. Alex writes historical fiction for both adults and young readers, and her first novel, Chill, is a ghost story set in Sheriff Muir, and it won the Scottish Book Trust Royal Mail Award. She grew up by the sea in Norfolk and graduated from King's College London more years ago than she cares to remember. When We Get to the Island is her 6th title, published by Fledgling in 2019. She's a writer in residence in schools through the Scottish Book Trust and a creative writing mentor through the What's Your Story programme. And she loves working with and inspiring young people. So, Alex, welcome.
Hi there.
Hi, Alex.
Hi.
Now we can hear you, which is great, but we can't. Oh, can we sort out how we might be able to see you?
Right. Can you not see me?
No, but we can hear you.
Right. I'll just see if I can fix the camera. It went off before.
Alex, do you want to try going out of the broadcast back into the Facebook chat and clicking the link again and coming in? It could just be that you've dropped the signal, that's
Right.
all.
Okay, I'll do that. So should I just leave the studio and come back in?
Yes, please.
Hello, Kelly. How are you doing?
Hello. Very
Hello.
well. We have had an epic amount of viewers tonight, Jackie. Over 700.
Wow, wow. And what struck me is the fact that we've had people from all those time zones, you know, and it's been so sweet seeing people say, like, I'm really sorry, you know, like Kristen in New Zealand saying, I'm really sorry, I've got to go and do the school run.
Kids,
Yeah.
And the good thing is now that we're on YouTube as well, anybody, well, obviously we're still on the page on Facebook, but we're also on YouTube, and that can be shared across all social media. So if you had family you want to share it with, it's easier than the Facebook. Just pop to YouTube, copy the link,
and
share it that
send
way.
that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'll put the link on the page tomorrow as well.
Beautiful.
I think Alex is coming back. We'll give it a week.
Okay, let's see if we can get her back in. Yeah.
Yay!
Hi.
Yay!
Hi.
Oh.
I was panicking there for a minute. Just technology. Yeah.
Alex, thank you for your patience. No
That's
need to panic. I just really appreciate you being last woman standing, drawing our evening to, you know, to a criminal wonderment of delight. From what I've read out, you know, in your bio, that idea of, for you, it's really important to work with young people.
Yes, it is. Yeah, I really do enjoy working with young people and just inspiring them. That I'm also a teacher as well. I don't teach in schools anymore, but I used to teach in schools, secondary schools, and with a lot of pupils whose lives were difficult. And that's informed my writing quite a lot. And also because I sometimes write for children as well. And that's when it all begins, is when they're between 8 and 12 years and begin to read and, you know, build up the enthusiasm. And it's when I read a lot too when I was young. So I just think it's really important. Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you. What are you going to read to us from tonight?
Well, I'm actually not reading from a novel. I've got 6 novels published, but this one is a short story that I thought I'd read. It's from the point of view of death, and it's from a kind of work in progress, which is a kind of some short stories, basically, but from the point of view of death. So this one's called A Tragedy in a Perthshire Wood. So I'll just read it.
Okay, but can I just say to start off with? Thank you so much for sharing a work in progress, and you know, and that it's part of, you know, a series of short stories. It just brings us a different angle, so it's lovely. Thank you.
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah, it's fun to experiment, and I haven't actually read this to anybody in particular yet, so I'm trying it out. So it's from the point of view of death. 1953, Katrina and her brother Robbie. They lived on an estate in Perthshire where their father was gamekeeper. Very close, went about together everywhere. Katrina was the youngest and idolised her big brother, adored him. They were both in secondary modern at this stage. They caught the bus, and when Katrina was bullied by the other kids, Robbie protected her, got himself into a fight because of it, but he didn't care. It wasn't a particularly happy marriage between the parents, as far as I can recall. A bit of an atmosphere, although I never really got to the bottom of what that was all about. I so rarely do, you see. They lived in an old house with crow-stepped gable windows and a view onto fields and woodland, a soft purple haze on the horizon. I remember it well because it was my favourite season, autumn. There was a faint smell of wood smoke on the air and a grey mist uncurling from the treetops. I had no idea who I was there for. I'd been called to attend the gamekeeper's house. There were 4 of them in all, and 2 of them weren't at home, the children. Just the parents then. There was an ominous atmosphere between the adults. Why would this peaceful woodland be targeted today of all days? I had no idea. As I said before, I don't always know who I'm coming for when I arrive on the scene. In the kitchen, the parents were arguing. Not so much violently, but with a quiet, passive aggression. She slammed the kettle onto the stove with a deliberate clatter as if to make a point. He merely looked at her and went out with his gun. I followed him down to the paddock, dogged his footsteps. A pheasant exploded from the undergrowth with a wild clatter, flying low across the slope of the misty hillside within his aim. He lifted his long rifle, held it against his shoulder, following its flight. They were clear within his sights, but he lowered his gun and they squawked on into the far woods to live another day. It wasn't his job to shoot them. He was there to harvest them for the season so that Mr. Kendrick, who owned the land, could invite his guests for some sport. I felt his anger as he stood there in the lower paddock, leaning against the gate. All this land and none of it his, yet it existed in his blood. It belonged to him. I stood in the trees watching him until he abandoned his post by the gate. Then he trudged his way back up to the house, left his rifle in the front porch and found his wife in the kitchen. He took her in his arms and kissed her. That completely threw me. In all their years of marriage, I think that must have been a first. I left them there and drifted off down the lane, where I could hear the children returning home from school. Robbie and his little sister, Katrina. Cat for short, he always called her. I could hear them calling to each other. He ran on ahead and she followed. They slammed the glass door, but no one answered. It seemed like there was no one at home. Their father's gun was still propped in the porch where he'd left it. They were used to rifles lying about the place. The one essential rule was that you broke the barrel, emptied it of bullets, and stored the ammunition separately. Robbie, who had a flair for dramatics, picked up the rifle. I held my breath. He rehearsed a perfect death scene, arms akimbo, body jerking with the impact of the bullets raining down on him as he fell backwards onto the couch. I got me an Injun, he shrieked, leaping up again, resurrected. Come on, Cat. He handed her the rifle. Blow me away. And she did. There was silence afterwards, a terrible silence. It followed Cat all the rest of her days. I went back there a month or 2 later, but the family had moved away to Canada by then. The house stood empty. That beautiful, soft, undulating countryside with smoky hillsides and the purple haze of woodland. Yes, that was a difficult case. I came upon Cat many years later, when she was an old woman. She had children of her own by then, a grown-up family, but in her final moments, as the last breath left her body, it was her brother's name I heard on her lips, Robbie. So that's that.
Mute myself. I was keeping so still for that. Alex, to write from that point of view, and it seems such just a regular story. Yeah, Joanne Baird said, "Oh, that's dark, Alex." Yeah, it really was. But the shift that you put in there, yeah, tragic and succinct. Yeah. What gave you the idea? When did you start to think that you wanted to write from the point of view of death?
a long time ago, actually. I started writing this. It's a kind of novella of these short stories, and its death is jumping in and out of these narratives, and you get these really sort of succinct sort of insights into people's lives. But also the fact that it's in their last moments. So one of the stories is actually accompanying Virginia Woolf in her last days, and just not in her last days, but in her last moments, and just that it's quite revealing, and it is very dark. And I hate to tell you this, but it is actually a true story, and that's going to really cheer people up. I know that, but the thing is, I'm a bit of a magpie, and I listen to people, and I listen to people's stories, and I have no idea of the names of the people. But I was working in a staff room, and another teacher, we were talking about something else, and she was talking about falling over in the shower as a child. And then it brought back this really painful memory, and she wasn't going to talk about it. And then she told me this story, and I never forgot it. And I knew I'd have to put it into a story. And I know that's going to really depress people. Sorry about that. But, it's just that, these stories often are very dark, and I suppose the setting for it as well, the woodland, that's not the setting where this tragedy must have taken place, but that setting is very local to me, that I walk my dog in these woods a lot. And in order to get this story succinct for our slot, I had to really cut out a lot of the description, because I'm actually quite wordy and verbose. So I had to really sort of, there were loads of description in there about the woods and the water being all coppery and all that, but I had to get rid of that. But I suppose the idea of death, I suppose I'm quite haunted by the idea of death, just like anybody else. I'm quite frightened of dying, and I don't like thinking about it. So what do? I just decide to go and write a novel about it, as a way of heading death off at the pass. I don't know. But yeah.
I think that is a really, really good way to deal with something like that. The catharsis of writing about something that scares you. I need to ask you a question that's been put in by Andrew James Gregg, and here it is. Will COVID intrude on your new short stories?
I don't think so, no, because I've got most of it written. And it seems as if it would do, because one of my chapters is actually it's called Quarantine, and it's about the Derbyshire village Iron when they, when they quarantined themselves off to save other villages, to save the rest of the north of England and that. And I actually wrote that before, and it's again from the point of view of death, where, it says I came jolting along on a cart, wrapped up in the bundle of cloth and all that. So I don't think I will touch on the COVID thing because I think we've all had enough of it, But but I've got plenty of stuff there without it. I've got Van Gogh. I've even got Leonard Cohen in there. So I'm slightly worried it's a bit haphazard, but it would take somebody else to say whether or not it works. I've just been a little bit experimental, and I hope it works.
I think the notion, though, that it's so many different points of view, in a way, well, not points of view because it's from the point of view of death, but these different people, and famous people and not famous people.
Yeah,
I think that eclectic mix will make it very interesting and very readable.
I hope.
Yeah, and I think very much we're still in a society where death, or to talk of death, is quite a taboo.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is a big taboo, isn't it? And that none of us know how to talk about it or how to deal with it. And then if somebody loses somebody, if someone's bereaved, people end up avoiding them because they don't know whether to say, "Oh, I'm really sorry," or whether not to mention it. So it's just this huge social embarrassment as well. But I've also had a lot of fun with it, with death. Like, death is fallible, and often in one of the stories ends up missing the person that they're supposed to be there for, and they go to the wrong one, sad looking man on a bench who looks a bit sad, and and she sees a wedding ring, so she thinks, oh, where there's love, there's trouble. There must be something there. And in fact, she misses the one that she's supposed to be there for, because he's fine, you know. Yeah, so I've had quite good fun with it as well, and I'm still editing it. Yeah.
Can I ask you? Will you be writing a next novel as well?
Yes, I definitely will. Yeah. At the moment, I'm just writing a children's novel set in Glasgow for 8 to 12-year-olds. But I've also got other ideas at some point. Yeah, another historical I'd like to do about an artist or an artist's model. You know, the relationship, or a female artist. Yeah.
Can we just say, Julie's just commented. Hi, Julie. Julie's been with us through this marathon of crime fiction. Death is a Woman. I
forgot to say that. It's a good job she said that.
Thank you, Julie.
I forgot to say that completely. See, it's what happens is Death is a woman, and she's being interviewed by a top journalist about her experiences. You see, so yeah, I'm so immersed in it that I'm completely taking it for granted that we all know Death is a woman in my version of it. But of course, we don't all know that. So, but yes, so Death is a woman, just to set the cat among the pigeons, you know. Well, we always assume it's a man, so why should it be a man, you know?
Totally. Listen, Alex, I am really sorry that we have to close. But it's 9:30. I think you have given us something so fabulous to end on. Death is a Woman, and that personification of death. It's just fabulous. I want to thank you for your reading. And I hope, as I've said to everybody else, that when we're allowed out, please come and read to us.
Definitely.
In Edinburgh. Yeah. All the very best with everything. And see you soon, yeah?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for having me. That's lovely.
Total pleasure. Total pleasure. Good night. Wow. What a way to end. I so hope you've enjoyed either being with us this evening or watching the reading either on the YouTube page. Hi, Kelly.
Hello. Wasn't that an awesome show?
It so was. Do you know what keeps striking me, though? The fact that, you know, the links that are there that we don't even know about, you know, that's spooky and just wonderful. Fabulous readings, so much to think about. And what I've really appreciated, because I know you do this scouting for us, and the fact that, you know, bringing authors that I might not have read before. You've got the antenna out and you bring them in. Oh, and look at this. This is lovely. You know, people have really enjoyed the night. It's been great to have you with us. Especially like Julie there. It's been my first live event and it's been brilliant. So glad you've enjoyed. Thank you, Joanne, for being with us. So good. Steve, Helene, Alan, Andrew, just so lovely to have people there watching with us, enjoying people's readings and forming the community that whilst we can't be physically together, we can be there linked like this. And that's so awesome. Tana, no worries. It's just, I know, see, we know Tana, we know you're in edits, girl, and that you're here with us is just fabulous. Thank you. And hope all's going well with your edits. So Kelly, are we done for the night?
We're
or
done.
do we just need to do something?
Oh, is there something a little bit French, maybe?
I think un petit quelque chose, oui?
Oui, oui.
Oh no.
Oh,
Hi, girl.
Hey, Maggie, how you doing?
Oh, I'm doing so well. I'm a bit tired because in France it's 10:30 now, but it's been so good. Oh, I've disappeared.
No, you haven't. Not
Sorry.
For us.
Not for us, you're here.
Okay, good.
Yeah,
I'm
well,
here, and it was brilliant.
Thank you.
Wow.
Thank you for monitoring there, for looking after those comments. Do you know, it's just so helpful to have somebody, because juggling all those balls is not possible. So to have those, yay, Maggie,
Go Maggie!
yeah, it's really good that you're there. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. I love doing this. I
And
love
again, to say thank
interacting with it. Go.
You're awesome, Maggie. You
No,
are awesome.
You've done so well. You've brought together everybody, and it's been wonderful because I've never been to, and we're at the bar in Edinburgh. But so thanks to you, digitally, I have now, and I've been a bit part of it, and it's just brilliant. And I've discovered people and authors, and I've rediscovered authors and more people, and it's just thank you both. It's brilliant.
Pleasure. So are we gonna come back and do this again in 2 weeks' time?
We are. We have a huge panel. Shall we tease or not?
Yes.
One small tease. One small tease.
A tiny tease.
Tiny tease.
What if I said the Justine John might be here on the 18th? Look up her book, Gilding the Lily.
Gilding the Lily.
Can I also just thank Susie Astley again for all her help on Twitter. She's been taking photos, sharing everything. So there is a space here for you too, Susie. We love you and thank you so much.
Yeah, Susie, bless you for that. Thank you for keeping the thing turning around out there on social media. So for now, because this tummy needs to get something in it, I am so desperate for something to eat. Yeah.
I did eat during the...
Yeah.
You must eat the loo, Jackie. Do you know?
So, to everybody out there, keep reading the crime fiction, keep sharing the book club, and we'll be back with you in 2 weeks' time for some more criminal magic. So good night, everyone, and thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Take care. God bless.
Good night. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.